Hello again, everybody, and welcome to an exciting episode of the Jim Cornette Experience, where today we'll provide interesting anecdotes, historical perspectives, scintillating conversation, ribald humor, witty cynicism, and then we'll talk about wrestling. It's the Cornucopia of Cornette Day, and to join me in all this, Hawaiian Brian, the podcasting lion, the king of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, Mr. Co-host to you. He's this week's poster boy for social distancing, the great and sick Brian Last.
Aloha, Jim. A pleasure to be here once again.
No, it's not. Don't you dare just don't you dare use the first words that come out of your chicken lips today, Brian, to lie to these people, the fine members of the cult of Cornette, and tell them it's a pleasure to be here. You are not pleasured or pleased to be anywhere. You are cursing your own existence. You are emitting profanities at your mother for giving birth to you because you're sick. You're under the weather. And you have not been practicing proper social distancing. You let the children up on the executive floor within 6 feet of you, didn't you now? Admit it.
I did get sick from one of the kids who had a cough, but on the bright side, the market's up today, big time, making up a lot of the losses from this week, so I'm in a good mood. I'm ready for action.
Automatic. The first words that you spoke to me today before we went on the air, you sounded like Vince McMahon introducing the Queen of Soul.
It takes me a while to get warmed up.
Yeah, and then you had to steam yourself so to get rid of the squeak. The squeak. I thought it was your chair squeaking, but instead it was your voice and your bronchial passages.
I mean, we're doing okay so far. I can't wait to see after hour 2 what my voice is going to sound like, but.
Well, don't worry. Just rely on me as you normally do. That's a safe bet every time. Just rely on me to carry us through this experience here. This experience, no pun intended.
You can tell I'm not feeling good when I go right to like my George Fenneman. Like, well, Groucho, we have another one here for you.
George, he had quite a successful career in television and behind the scenes, but people still remember him as Groucho's second in command there. But anyway, I'll carry the program today. You just lay back. This is my show, unlike the drive-thru, which is your show. And on my show, we have, as I mentioned at the top of the program, all this witty repartee that we're going to be bantering about. I'll banter, and you just listen to me banter, because we don't do cheap radio here. This isn't Dingo and the Baby. We don't do phony sound effects and cheap fart jokes, and shit like that. So anyway, there's news in the world. Did you hear about the Olympics, Brian?
I mean, a little bit. I hate the Olympics. I've never liked them, so I never really pay attention to them. They're in Tokyo, but there's a COVID outbreak, and they won't let people there, and the one woman tested positive for marijuana, which is ridiculous that they disqualified her from the Olympics, and other than that, I really don't care. The Olympics suck.
Oh, I see. It's going to be one of those days. Well, let me bring you up a little bit.
Am I wrong?
Well, you're just so sour, Brian. You're so sour there about that. Confrontational with your family deer there, the neighborhood deer, and now sour about the Olympics, where the best and brightest, the most athletic, the highest achievers get to go from around the world and show their skills. And yes, you are correct. It's ridiculous that they're banned. They don't even. What are all the professional sports that don't even test for pot anymore? Several of the major professional sports have just dropped that to begin with. But now we do not, as a country, the United States, do not get to have the fastest woman in the world or whatever because they're cranky over there. But regardless. Yes, they're in Japan, that's got a low vaccination rate and a high COVID spread, and they weren't going to allow international fans in attendance anyway, but they were going to let Japanese people that are already there go, and now they're not even doing that. So they're going to do empty arena Olympics events, which can say, the people at the Olympics, they don't chant properly. They never go, "You fucked up," or "This is awesome." So they don't work hard enough anyway. Might as well not have them there. But it's just amazing to me that, the whole COVID thing, this shit that the Democrats made up to fuck with poor old dumpster fire Donnie is still messing up Japan even after he lost the election in a trouncing and has been banished to Mar-a-Lago to be a grumpy old fucking slumlord down there. How is it possible that all the stuff that was made up just to get even with Donald Trump is fucking up the Olympics in Japan? How are those people that think that reconciling that in their little pea brains, you think, Brian?
I don't know. I just got a new book. I haven't started reading it yet, but Nightmare Scenario by Damian Pallotta and I forget the woman's name, but it's about the Trump administration's response to the pandemic. And I've read some of the excerpts that caused me to buy the book, and it's pretty amazing. Like, he was near death. Like, Mark Meadows, the chief of staff, was crying because he thought the president was about to die. And they thought, like, oh, maybe this will change the way he sees this whole thing. No, they loaded him filled with every drug they had, every steroid they had, and it just
every experimental shit that nobody else had access to.
And it brought him back to life.
And then he realized that the most important thing was the suckers that vote for him and keeping them instead of smartening people up, and he immediately lied his ass off again. Well, there you have it. But anyway, that's just for all of the people that may be wandering by the speakers on somebody else's podcast, because normally those people don't listen to us, those type of people that think that this was all made up to get even with Trump. Fuck you. But apparently something else that was in large part made up was the whole Bruce Lee, Gene LaBelle, Quentin Tarantino controversy that we talked about. It was just on the drive-through that we discussed this, that Tarantino had been on. And then there's varying reports on this, but some people, the original questioner had asked something to the effect of, what do you think about a story Quentin Tarantino told on Joe Rogan about Gene LaBelle beating up Bruce Lee because Bruce Lee was being stiff with the stuntmen, was the way the question was phrased. And then some people have said, no, he didn't say that on Joe Rogan. He said they brought Gene LaBelle to the set just in case Bruce Lee got out of hand. And then other people are saying, well, this fucking Tarantino to begin with, because he just put the scene in his, which I have not seen the movie. Have you seen that particular movie?
That's the one movie of his I haven't seen yet, and I actually really want to. This is the problem with not having time. I haven't had a chance to watch a movie that I actually really want to see, but I'm going to very soon.
I haven't watched a movie that was made in the last 20 years and probably in the last 15 years. But anyway, in the movie, they have Bruce Lee gets beat up, right? And there was already consternation amongst the MMA community or martial arts community or the Bruce Lee devotees.
Plus the portrayal of him, not just that he got beat up, but the portrayal of him.
Plus, and the portrayal of him as being fairly prickish and etc. And people have shot that down. But now, basically, a bunch of people have commented since we put that clip up that obviously what we said was correct. That do you think if there was a fight between Gene LaBelle and Bruce Lee, that in the martial arts and or pro wrestling communities, that this story would not have been told and retold endlessly? It's fucking horse shit. But some more of the Bruce Lee researchers have said that Bruce Lee and Gene LaBelle not only didn't fight, but they were friendly. And through stunt work in television, when LaBelle did that in the 60s all over the place, and Bruce Lee trained to some extent, not for like years devotedly, but to some extent in grappling with Gene LaBelle, because he recognized that grappling was a fucking big part of martial arts. So this basically Quentin Tarantino, I think, just wanted to get people fucking fired up, and I'll go after Bruce Lee now.
He got Bruce Lee's daughter fired up, apparently. That's the one person he actually apologized to.
Well, yeah, and I saw that. He said, well, that was a half-ass. Well, I apologize because, I understand it's her dad, but no, but. None of the things that you were saying in whatever version of them were actually apparently true about Bruce Lee and or Gene LaBelle and or Bruce Lee being stiff with stunt people. I can it ain't ballet, as they say. I can believe he threw a potato in his time, but not, just carelessly and prickishly.
Do you like his films, Tarantino?
Oh, I thought you were going to say Bruce Lee. Yeah. Yes, I actually, and I'm unlike you. I haven't seen nearly all of them, but the ones I've seen, I like Reservoir Dogs. Definitely like Pulp Fiction.
Jackie Brown?
I remember seeing that, and yes, I think I saw it once or twice. It wasn't like something I have seen that he's in and worked on, but technically is not his film. I've seen this probably a dozen or 15 times. The funniest fucking movie, 4 Rooms. You remember this?
Yeah, I remember that. It was four.
That was a full-throated endorsement.
It was 4 different filmmakers, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So each one of them did a scene, but Tarantino acted in it also, and et cetera, et cetera. But what's his name? Tim Roth was the bellhop at this old Hollywood hotel, and the fucking a lot of the Tarantino cast of regulars is in it, but the one scene in that, no matter how many times I see it, it's like the perfect run-in in wrestling. The way that they build it and the fucking payoff, then the finish is still that I will fucking hurt myself laughing. It's about 2 kids being babysat by the bellhop that find a dead whore under the bed in the hotel room. And the payoff is the funniest thing ever recorded in film history. But anyway, yes, I like Tarantino, but apparently he's just drumming up publicity for himself.
What about From Dusk Till Dawn?
Oh, the Dusk Till Dawn. I was about to mention that one. From Dusk Till Dawn. And what's her name? God damn it.
Oh, shit. Oh, Juliette Lewis.
Help me. Huh?
Juliette Lewis.
No.
Oh, Salma Hayek.
There you go.
Yeah.
That was the best part about From Dusk Till Dawn. I could have watched her from dawn till dusk also.
That's right.
She's not bad in the daylight either.
See, I love Jackie Brown, of course, featuring the goddess herself, Pam Grier. That's just a fantastic movie I can watch over and over. But Kill Bill, to me, 1 and 2 is just a masterpiece. That is one of the true masterpieces in the history of cinema.
I saw those once a piece, and that's about enough.
Oh, I think they're brilliant.
Well, anyway. Is Quentin Tarantino on Cameo?
I don't know. That's a great question.
Well, I am, by God. This weekend, as a matter of fact. Folks, remember the Great American Cameo Bash is this weekend, Sunday, July 11th, from noon Eastern until 2 p.m. A wrinkle this time, because before they were selling out so quick, people were rushing or being frustrated. Well, this time we're letting it all hang out. You got plenty of time to give me the information I need to give people the talking to they deserve. They will be on sale for 2, however many we sell, we're going to deal with it. Hotchkiss Featherbottom has gotten clearance from his parole officer. Everything's fine. He can be over here to shoot this week. So go to cameo.com/Jim Cornette, noon Eastern on Sunday, July 11th. 2 big hours. The Great American Cameo Bash. And also, I should mention again, my incredibly unique and collectible NFTs, Brian, are selling like hotcakes. Of course, having said that, to be perfectly fair, the collectible hotcake market is not what it used to be. However, there's still some available. I want to, by the way, the lucky purchaser of one of these signature series cards, your jacket, shirt, tie, and pants autographed with handwritten letter of authenticity will be in the mail to you this coming week. Folks, go to ProWrestlingNFT.com, as I mentioned, for a variety of the levels that are still available, including the unique JC face with the shirt, tie, pants, jacket, and racket all autographed is still available. That's ProWrestlingNFT.com. And for the people who are confused about the cryptic currency, the information is on the website. Bless you if you understand it. Got a couple emails I wanted. We're going to talk about an old friend of ours, our favorite uncle, but I got a couple of emails real quick. I'm just going to use his first name, David. You will know who you are. I'm not going to read your email that you sent to the drive-through here, or the drive-through. It's your show, to the experience here, to all of us here. David's been having a horrible time. He lost his wife in December. They were married for 21 years, and he's been getting some escape from our shows and our podcasts, and that's why I'm not going to read the whole email because it's very personal. But, David, we're thinking about you, and we're glad that you've been able to get away from shit for a little while. And also Ben from Scotland, same deal. He wrote a long email. But he and his wife have both been through a real rough time, and they're moving to Portugal. So Ben, that's who you are. Now you know how to know it's you, and we hope things get better for you there. But again, some of the personal emails we get with people who say that we made them feel better. I know you wish somebody could make you feel better right now.
I'll tell you, that sounds like a great way to do it. Send me to Portugal.
What is the main thing that you would want to see if you go to Portugal? I've never studied Portugal or been to Portugal.
Oh, probably the shrine to Aldo Montoya, I would imagine.
You motherfucker. I thought you were going, oh, Portugal's a great place. How have you missed out on this? You got to hear about this, Jim. I'm going to tell you all about the fucking sights and sounds of Portugal. You come up with the fucking Aldo Montoya statue. Do something around here today, even if you are sick. Explain to me why Uncle Dave and Zelina Vega are, how it has come to this. Did you hear the audio? Did you see the words that were twittered out of their mouths? They're at each other's throats. How has it come to this?
I saw it, but I wasn't paying close attention because there was a clip going around of Dave on one of his shows on his website.
Well, yes, I hadn't heard that. But it can't be. Seriously, what he apparently was responding to in this instance, but I'm saying he can't be this sensitive. There has to be some other kind of goddamn underlying, tension or whatever. She tweeted a funny meme picture of me while, dirt sheet writers think of more lies to tell about me. Laughing face, right? That was it. And he goes off on this fucking rant on his one of his audio programs with Brian Alvarez and called her fucking stupid. And he's trying to slide through the loophole. He didn't call her fucking stupid twice. He just, anybody that says exactly what she said is fucking stupid.
If I could say something, so I hadn't heard the clip and it was going around and I just, I wasn't feeling good this week. And quite frankly, I wasn't really caring too much about this story. So I wasn't paying attention. And then earlier today, I finally listened and I had read the quote, but when I actually heard it, I don't want to say taken aback. It's not like it's a shocking thing, but I had never heard Dave use that tone before, ever.
35 years. I've never heard him. It's almost like someone has inhabited his fucking brain as they're a pod growing somewhere in Campbell by the Sea, California, or wherever. And here's the thing is that this was ridiculously, like I said, sensitive overreaction. Or as Dennis Condrey would say, struck a nerve, for God's sake. She doesn't say it. She doesn't mention anybody's name. She doesn't say who or what. It's another wrestler say, the Dirt Sheet Riders again. But he took this like his mother had been called names and his father had been accused of selling secrets to the Nazis in World War II. It went right to the heart. How dare she? And he said, how dare she group everybody together like that? There are legitimate reporters. They shouldn't be grouped together. Well, and then he said to Brian Alvarez, he said, well, of course, you and me wouldn't be in that group. But that's what he's taking offense about, apparently. Good Lord. He's the one that defends and takes up for and makes excuses for all these fucking jackoffs running around these days that just knock the wrestling business and say what a clown show it ought to be and how fake it is and blah, blah, blah. But you say something about a dirt sheet writer. Well, if he thinks he's a real reporter, he knows there are dirt sheet writers. these fucking goofballs that are on, just like every other endeavor now has, these amateur journalists that think that because they're on Facebook or Twitter or whatever and they've read a book, they deserve to be able to write one, and they just parrot what they hear from other ridiculous sources. That's how 40% of America gets his news these days. But Brian, if you were a staff writer for the New York Times or the Washington Post, and you heard somebody on the internet saying or writing, knocking amateur journalists on the internet, would you include yourself in that category? Or would you say, no, that's right, we ought to fucking get rid of all these amateur fucking journalists on the internet. People ought to be vetted and go to school for this. But he just immediately took that dirt sheet writer like an arrow straight through the heart and came back out swinging, reminding Brian Alvarez they should not be grouped in that collective there, and then fucking telling her she was fucking stupid for 2 minutes, and then she just bowed right back up and said, Dave, I didn't mention your name. I didn't mention anybody's name. But since I have no respect for you because you constantly, and I guess he doesn't mean to say bad shit about women. He just has no idea of how to talk to a woman, apparently. As opposed to me, who just does not give a shit. But she said she has no respect for him since he's been knocking all the women in the business anyway. But there's got to be... I mean, he jumped on that dirt sheet writer thing that she said, like these AEW fucking apologists, hop on everybody when they say, this show's actually sucks, doesn't it? Don't you think? Oh my God.
It actually reminds me of something that happened with us because, all things being equal, what Thea Trinidad or Zelina Vega tweeted out, the picture of her or the little gif of her saying that dirt sheet writers are trying to think of the next lie. It's rather benign. It didn't focus on any specific person. It didn't tag anyone in it. And then he responded the way he did. It's like, remember when we were discussing something with the Hall of Fame and you just jokingly threw out, do you think Dave's fixing the Hall of Fame? And then he did like a whole segment flipping out about that, he started tweeting to me like exactly how I was allowed to apologize for what I never said.
The stipulations and parameters upon which you shall apologize to me shall be the following. You would think he'd be busier sitting there analyzing every possible aspect of how he can make the AEW television ratings look as good as possible, to have so much time that to answer poor old Zelina Vega. Anyway, I think maybe it's a problem, Brian, with communication. It's a problem with communication. Maybe we're not hearing each other as well as we should be. Do you think that might be it?
That might be it. In this specific case, that could be it.
If you're not hearing what are coming out of people's mouths, and then you can't understand them if you don't hear them. So if you want to hear these podcasts and these news reports and these things that are said as clearly as possible, you got to get you some of the Raycon wireless earbuds, because the Raycon wireless earbuds in your ears, or even the Wacons, Baba Wawa, where's Wacons? The Raycon wireless earbuds in your ears can make all the difference. You get the crisp, powerful sound at half the price of other premium audio brands. They look great, and they feel even better with the cool colors and the customizable gel tips for the comfortable in-ear fit. The last thing you want is pain when you're being penetrated orally. That's AURALLY, orally, in your ear. Raycons are built to go wherever you go with quick and seamless Bluetooth pairing and a compact charging case. We've established that blue teeth is not the proper phraseology for this, even when there are indeed more than one Bluetooths in the area. But right now, listen up, folks. Raycon is offering 15% off every single one of their products for my listeners. And here's what you got to do to get it. You go to buyraycon.com. That's BUYRAYCON.com. Raycon, buyraycon.com/JCE, and you're going to get 15% off your entire Raycon order. Grab a pair and a spare, and even more. 15% off buyraycon.com/JCE, buyraycon.com/JCE. Make sure that there's no misunderstandings. There's no misunderstanding. You're hearing what people are saying, so then you can make your own informed decisions about whether you want to let it go or whether you want to be a drama queen and a nervous Nelly and a nattering nabob of negativity like Uncle Dave Meltzer. Okay, well, now we're going to history class, Brian, because a lot of people have been liking, past couple weeks, we've had some segments from Scott Teal's crowbarpress.com St. Louis program reprints. And I think it was last week we discovered by reading what Scott has put out here, so it's not like we were discovering anything, but it was an overlooked fact. The very first televised world title change in wrestling was in St. Louis in 1947, an experimental broadcast. In this one, this is one of the programs from December 1951, and like we've explained where these came from, but if you go to crowbarpress.com, their classic arena programs 6, 7, and 8, which covers St. Louis through 1943 through 1951, but there was... We mentioned that they were the programs in St. Louis because Sam Muchnick was an ex-sports writer and St. Louis was always presented as a sport. So the programs were very well written and more newspaper-like, sports news, things like that. And there is in this program a excerpt from a Wall Street Journal article on wrestling in 1951. And there's some parallels to the 50s, the 80s, and to a lesser extent, the modern day, is that every once in a while, the media finds wrestling and declares that it's hot. And you've been through this, Brian. And even though in various places wrestling had been hot, it just wasn't the place that the media thought. And when wrestling got on network television, when television became a thing in the late 40s, suddenly, it did bring a boom in some places, but it brought a bust television in a few other places. But since there had been no wrestling, as we've mentioned so many times, in New York City and Madison Square Garden, it was in the smaller clubs and the outer boroughs, etc. But there was no wrestling in Madison Square Garden. So now, when wrestling's on national television, and wrestling has come back in Madison Square Garden in New York, the national media thought that it had all been bad, and now it was all good again. Same thing with the 80s, et cetera, et cetera. Same thing with the Attitude Era. But this was the Wall Street Journal in 1951. Have you read this one yet, Brian?
I don't know if I have.
The Golden Superman, the Great Scott, and the Red Menace are helping to write one of the outstanding business success stories of 1951. This is from the Wall Street Journal. As a matter of fact, page 1 of the Wall Street Journal, apparently, of that era. The above-mentioned businessmen are professional wrestlers. About 5 years ago, their industry was flourishing about as mightily as the buggy business. Today, it's headed for its biggest year ever, and at a time when most of the amusement industry, from baseball to opera, is floundering in red ink. Thus far this year, about 12 million persons in the United States have paid about $15 million, and this is back when $3 and $2 ringside, $1.75 general admission, etc., to see the professional grunt and groaners. That's a 9% rise in attendance and 11% gain in gate receipts over a year ago. And this is where it gets funky, because I don't know where they got these records. Compared with 1946, the rise in attendance amounts to 164%. The gate receipt gain comes to about 180%. But about 300 arenas and about the same number of cities from coast to coast are staging wrestling matches this year, about twice as many as in 1946. This year, promoters in about 30 cities will gross $300,000 or more. 6 years ago, there weren't any taking in that much. That, I believe, because the changes in ticket prices and the year after World War II, but also this brings up something really interesting. Television and the start of the formation of the territories and the starting of the territories running spot shows that the main promoters wouldn't have run, smaller markets, smaller towns, happened in the 50s. So there were, and also as the interstate highway system got started in 1956, 57, but the difference in amounts of professional wrestling events run from the, say, late 40s to the early 60s is tremendous because of all those things. It was easier to get places. Television exposure, once it set in, made stars out of the guys. Territories formed, and instead of a promoter like Sam Muchnick in St. Louis, there were a ton of promoters that just promoted their own town, a major city in the 30s and 40s, but as the territories formed, they needed more towns and more shows around their particular bases. But anyway, wrestling was in the Wall Street Journal in 1951, and they were saying that 5 years previously, wrestling was about as popular as the buggy whip business. But Sam Muchnick has a column in the previous month's program. I'm sorry, it's not even the previous months. It's his previous event, because both Sports Pointers, the PAX and later Thez promotion, and In the Ring, Sam Muchnick's program covered the Wall Street Journal article. But Muchnick brings up the incredible run that we talked about a week or two here ago on the program. Bill Longson, between 1942 and 1945, over a 3-year period, in 58 shows, had sold 573,000 tickets. And that was during the period of time. And then later on, over the previous several years, the Keel under Thez and Watson had done up to, well, a number of sellouts, and the arena did 17,796 on March 15th, 1951. That was, oh God, that big Thez Longson rematch, I think. Anyway, point being, it's the appearance, and it's, as Vince McMahon always said, perception is reality. The wrestling business, until the modern day, was always hot somewhere. And it might not have been in the modern media centers. So to the people in New York, and hence to the national media, in the 40s, wrestling was deader than a doornail. But in St. Louis and Toronto and Houston and these other places, it was drawing record crowds. But that didn't fit the narrative. So whenever somebody, whether it's the network TV the first time around in the early 50s in New York, or then whether it's Vince's national expansion, which was based out of New York, or then whether it was the Attitude Era in the 90s, which contained a promotion that was based in New York, all of a sudden the national media is going, well, wrestling's hot again. It's been cold. It was cold actually in the early 90s, but that wasn't the territory's fault, because the people that made it cold, the two big companies, had run them out of business. But it was never cold in the 40s everywhere, and it wasn't cold. It was the furthest thing from cold in the 80s for Vince's national expansion. The 70s was probably the most successful decade that almost all of the modern territories ever had at the gate. But I thought that was interesting. Here's the thing, 12 million tickets sold in 1951. How many did we sell in 2021, you think, for wrestling? For any and all pro wrestling events, even the ones that label themselves as pro wrestling and ought to be hauled in for false advertising, how many tickets you think got sold in the United States in, well, I can't say
2021.
COVID. Yeah. 2019 or 2020, which we got disrupted in 2020. How many you think were sold in 2019?
I have no idea.
There is, well, the WWE is
how many shows do they even run anymore? Yeah.
Well, they're publicly traded, so they report, or at least used to, but I think somebody figured it out a few years ago that they were around 600,000 or 700,000 tickets per year. Now, everybody out there, bear with me.
Is that counting WrestleMania?
Well,
that's
was it or was it?
That's 100,000 tickets, right?
Well,
give or take.
That was before they started doing WrestleMania at the stadiums a few years ago. Do you think they sell 1 million tickets, though?
No, because I don't think they run enough shows.
Yeah, and I was about to say, for the people who are going to, oh my God, AEW, well, they sold out all in or all out or all over or whatever. Take all of the non-WWE live events of 2019 and put them all together in the United States of America. Do you think they sold as many live event tickets as the WWE itself did? Being fair.
No, not even close. I don't think so.
Okay, so then if somebody was to find out how many live event tickets did WWE sell in 2019 and double that and say, okay, that's how many we sold in the United States of America, and tell me how close you get to 12 million when there were, 100 million fewer people in this country in 1951 than there are now.
Here's a question for you, and this may be an unreasonable question. And again, it's not even an equal equation because you're looking at multiple different cities running. But if you took all the non-WWE shows of 2019 and you took all the attendance figures of all those shows, would that equal 1 month of wrestling in 1951? The whole year of 2019.
I can't see how it would. I can't see how it would.
Yeah, me neither.
In 1951, besides the fact that Chicago was doing great business, as we've talked about from the programs and the magazines we've excerpted here on the program, there was live wrestling 4 nights a week just in the Chicago metropolitan area in 1951.
And there was a promotional war.
But yes, that's right. There was more than one promotion going. So, and when you think about the weekly towns everywhere in the South, and then you think about the Madison Square Garden had just started back up and was a success again. And you go to, there were some people, as I mentioned, and hold on, let me check this article one more time and see if he does mention it, because for a while when television came in, Paul Bowser in Boston tried it and nearly killed his business because the people were staying home and they were watching it on television live.
Yeah, all those cards we talk about in Boston from the 60s with Pfeffer booking for Tony Santos, they had no TV.
No. You could still promote in those days the old-fashioned way with word of mouth and window cards and posters and radio, etc., newspaper. But basically, TV in some places took a while to take hold, and it took a couple of starts and stops before it was used in a way that would increase business instead of kill it off. And Boston's one of them, and Memphis, was a great wrestling city for years and years, but in the early 50s, when they were doing business, they tried local television, and it didn't stick. And it wasn't until in the mid-50s, finally, when Les Wolfe ended up getting bought out or pushed out or whatever the case may be by Roy Welch, and he got a television that he knew how to make work for them, that's the highest rated television wrestling program of all the modern territories didn't even get started till 1957. So, it just depended, because a lot of people, that's why, honestly, the first Clash of Champions in Greensboro, North Carolina at the Greensboro Coliseum is so well remembered today, and the great match with Flair and Sting and the Midnight of Fantastics and blah, 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 and the great TV ratings it got. It was a poor live event house in Greensboro for the time. There was only like 6,000 people there, which was half a house for Greensboro, because they knew they could stay home and see it on TV for free on the couch. that was still a concern even in 1988. That's why that Crockett knew, and they had figured that the house was going to be down, and but they were doing it for the rating and for the relationship with TBS. So television, if you use it the right way, and I mean, in the early days when there was no such thing as television and suddenly there became television, you had to figure it out, and some places took to it and some didn't. But even in modern times, the wrong kind of television can do more damage than it does good. When Ring of Honor had got on HDNet, as it was at the time, they thought, okay, television, that's going to, we should immediately see some kind of increase in our business. Then actually it was the opposite. They didn't see any increase in ticket sales anywhere. They saw a decrease in DVD sales because people were getting those, that's what they were doing, was putting just top arena matches on the television program with no context or no build to drawing to an internet pay-per-view or a big live event gate or whatever. And it's causing people to just say, well, maybe I can skip that DVD because look. But that was only for the really devoted, because the main problem was nobody could see HDNet. At that point in time, it's Access TV now. We all know who populates that part of the world these days. But HDNet, when I was executive producer of the program, I had to pay $10 a month extra on my cable just to get the channel that my television program was on. So that TV didn't do anything for them, and actually it set them back somewhat overall. It just depends. Anyway, your thoughts?
First of all, let me just say, and I think a lot of the listeners agree, I've been loving the historical segments we've been doing lately on the show. And boy, Scott Teal, if he's listening, keep putting out books if it's going to keep producing segments like this.
Yes.
Here on the show. Should plug crowbarpress.com. I mean, this is such fascinating stuff. And, in the past when we've talked about some of Dave Meltzer's comments, it's one of the things I always say, that you can compare, now versus then, but you really can't, because there are so many intangibles and so many things that are radically different in every respect in terms of promoting weekly, having weekly cities, local territories. It's just a different world now and then, and it's hard to even compare. It's two different businesses. It's hard to even compare the two.
Boy, especially when you're looking at it in the ring, it's hard to compare the two these days. Anyway, we wanted to make mention of something also. The news came out this week that Terry Funk is in an assisted living facility down in Texas. And this was met with, obviously a lot of concern. And then I think it was Don Morocco that had mentioned it on a podcast or a radio show that he was on. But then Tommy Dreamer had tweeted, no, I talked to Terry, and, he's laughing at everybody and glad they're talking about him and making everybody lighten up a little bit. Obviously it's truth is somewhere in between, yay and boo, in that, it's sad to see Terry need to be in assisted living. He's almost 80. And obviously, Vicky, his wife, who is just the sweetest woman in the world, had passed away not long ago. And I think when you're almost 80, regardless of who you are, you probably don't need to be sitting around the house all by yourself. So I know Terry's had good days and bad days, and we just wish him the best. But I don't think we're ready to write the dirty funker off just yet. The old lady that used to live next door to the castle here, it was my mom's best friend for years and years, went to assisted living, and she was there for like 7 years. She was 92 when she passed away, but she just liked it because she had some company and didn't have to do the cooking. But it's another byproduct of time that the people that I didn't used to consider old have gotten a lot older, myself included. You're not as young as you used to be either, Brian.
No, I'm not. And with this Terry Funk story, I think it hit a lot of people hard because, Terry Funk's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, but I can actually say I love the guy. I'm really blessed that I got to know him when I was a teenager in the 90s. I got to talk to him on the phone all the time. I got to go to his ranch. And throughout the years, we every now and then would see each other. Remember when you brought him into New York for Ring of Honor? I had my cousin go pick him up and bring him, and it was just great to see him again after all these years. But I'm not unique in having this experience with Terry Funk. Despite being one of the great heels of all time, I think anyone that meets him instantly loves the guy. He's just such a genuine good guy, great to talk to, smart. And I think it just pains a lot of people to hear that he's in any kind of bad way at all, just because he's universally loved. There are very few people in wrestling that are universally loved. I'm trying to think of anyone I've ever heard say anything bad about Terry Funk, and I can't think of a single example off the top of my head.
No. And I'm blank also. And that's the thing. And with Terry, a lot of different generations consider him part of their childhood because he was around for so long and he had such a incredible career in so many different places. But when you think about it, he was a young babyface in West Texas in the 60s. He was, by the time the 70s came around, he was, first known as Dory's younger brother, the policeman, for Dory Funk Jr., the world champion. But he gets to be one of the best workers and the best talkers, and then he becomes the world champion, having, I won't say classic old-style NWA world title matches, but souped up. He could work. He could do those matches, but he did them with the Terry Flair. And I don't mean Ric Flair. I mean his fucking style, his spin on everything. And they were souped up NWA world title matches. And then he was a star in Japan and could pick his spots where he could, all the 80s in the United States, he could come in and out. And we always missed Terry. We always missed Terry in the United States in the 80s because he never stayed around too long because he was back and forth to Japan. He was only picking his spots and making, he didn't have to work really besides Florida, right, which is a great territory to work, but he didn't have to work the territories by the 80s. He could pick and choose and go wherever he wanted. And then the 90s, he wants to help perpetuate the wrestling business, so he works for me and Paul E. at the same time, and does different shit in each place. He's having classic old-style Southern Territory matches with Bob Armstrong, and he's doing barbed wire shit with Sabu in fucking Philadelphia. Did he mention the late 80s WCW run, so he could do the shit with Flair and Steamboat. And at that time, he'd been in the business, 25 years. And he's out there with Steamboat and Flair like he's a kid. But he could do everything, and he could be a different person at each stage in his life. But did you ever think that the 1970s NWA World Champion Terry Funk could bring the people in Philadelphia to tears by just walking to the ring while Desperado played and be the sympathetic, grandfatherly old Desperado with one more fucking fight left in him? All right. He's amazing.
Well, listen, listeners of the 605 Super Podcast have heard this before. I'm going to do it here. Terry Funk's my favorite of all time. It's like Terry Funk, Bret Hart, Ric Flair, Midnight Express, Roddy Piper. Those are like my top tier. Whenever I'm in a bad mood, put them on. I may still be in a bad mood, but I'll be cutting good promos. That's really what happens. But I loved, and I was fortunate because I got to see him in Smoky Mountain, and then I got to see him in ECW a lot, and then I got to see him also in Amarillo, but I hated Desperado. I hated him coming out to Desperado. I just did not like that. That was not the way I wanted Terry Funk presented. I understand why it worked. I understand why Paul did it. I understand why people got emotional. Maybe it's because Don Henley's a prick. I really don't know. But I just did not like him coming out to Desperado.
But here's the thing, that I wouldn't have wanted Japanese Terry Funk or Memphis Terry Funk or WCW against Flair Terry Funk to come out to Desperado, because it wouldn't have matched the energy and the menace and the danger and whatever. But at that point, I thought it fit because, it's if you can get something in ECW television that actually tugs at your heartstrings, embrace it, because it didn't come along very often. It was just mayhem and chaos. But I see where you're going with that.
Think of what an amazing run he had just for a few years there in the 90s. I mean, throughout the 90s, but like 93, 94, 95. He's working all these amazing indie matches. He's working ECW. He has the series with Eddie Gilbert on the indies. In 94 alone, he works for ECW, WCW, and Smoky Mountain. He's a semi-regular in WCW for a while he's working ECW. He was amazing. And you would see him everywhere, and he always delivered. There was never a bad Terry Funk match. It's easier to find a bad Ric Flair match than a bad Terry Funk match. And that's not to put Ric Flair down, because I love Ric Flair.
Well, that's just because Terry Funk never had to work with El Gigante.
Well, Terry Funk did have to work with Junkyard Dog. He figured out how to do it.
Well, that's true.
But then again, he also went home. And I do want to say also one last thing.
Wait a minute, I got to say this. He figured out the way to work with Junkyard Dog at that period in Dog's career was just to never let Dog touch him and take all the bumps for himself.
CM Punk tweeted out the other day, and I'm paraphrasing, I may get this wrong, after this news came out about Terry's health. He said, in retrospect, I probably should have just left a note that my horse was sick. That was really well put.
Anyway, we all wish Terry the best, always, because I mean, you know how much, you said he was one of your favorites. You know how much I've enjoyed him all these years, and since the first 5-star match.
You know what I love, too? Scott Cornish, I just saw the Wrestling Humorist point this out in the Mothership Facebook group, I believe. To this day, Terry Funk still, even though you could tell he obviously loves the guy, if you bring up Dusty Rhodes, he's like, that asshole. Yeah. He's such an asshole. You could tell they love each other, but anytime since the 90s, whenever I heard Terry Funk get asked about Dusty Rhodes, he always called him an asshole.
That egg-sucking dog. You know, Brian, my father, one time when there was this no-good mangy dog nipping at my heels, he took that dog out behind the barn, and that dog's name was Dusty. And he was an egg-sucking dog, and when my father took that dog out behind the barn, I never saw that dog again. The first 5-star match, the first 5-star promos, by gum, by golly.
By gum?
By gum, by God, by gum, by golly. Buy one of those things. I'll tell you what you ought to buy, the first 5-star cereal. How's that? Let's just get right into it.
Yeah.
Folks, the first 5-star cereal in the history of rating cereal is brought to you by Magic Spoon, the folks at MagicSpoon.com. And we've been talking about them, how great this stuff is and how good it is for you instead of all the sugar and the carbs and the processed crap and shit that makes your kids bounce off the walls and that you shouldn't eat because it makes your stomach lag over your belt. You know, that's terrible when you got the furniture disease, Brian. You know, when your chest is in your drawers. But anyway, if you want to feel good and have a good breakfast and be healthy at the same time, Magic Spoon will get you there. 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only 4 net grams of carbs in each serving, and 140 calories per serving, although sometimes I do overindulge. It's keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, low-carb, and GMO-free, but not what free? Taste! It tastes great in cocoa, fruity, frosted, peanut butter, blueberry, and cinnamon. You can build your own box or you can buy a variety pack and they'll do it for you. Regardless of which, you go to magicspoon.com/Jim, Jim, to grab the build your own box or the variety pack. Try it today and use the promo code Jim at checkout to save $5 off your order. It's got the 100% happiness guarantee. If you don't like it for any reason because you don't like happiness, they will give you your money back because they like to be happy. And you're not going to ruin their mood at Magic Spoon. MagicSpoon.com/Jim. Use the code Jim to save $5 off your next order.
We've been seeing a lot on Twitter lately, people sending us pics of all the Magic Spoon boxes of cereal getting delivered to their house. And sometimes we even see the phrase, Brian was right, frosted is best.
I knew you had to bring that up, that people were praising you because of your ascertainment of the proper best cereal.
Well, I like to see it more like they're praising the frosted cereal. It's just I'm a conduit to get there.
You're certainly a conduit. All right, I can believe if you can do it, nobody can. Anyway, I got an email and I had to bring this up. This is not necessarily wrestling related, so that means it might be entertaining. But Don from Memphis said, I've been listening to the show for a few years now, and I've heard Jim make sly references to and quote from the legendary Don Knotts movie, The Ghost and Mr. Chicken. Please ask Jim to talk about his love of this movie. Well, Don, I will certainly do that because I can't think of anything better to talk about on a wrestling podcast than The Ghost and Mr. Chicken these days. No. I love that movie. I have the VHS. I have the DVD. I quote from it all the time. As a matter of fact, the last couple of times I've given a speech at like the Charlotte Fan Fest when they have the, the awards banquet, or at any time that I've been speaking in public over the last several years, and Stacy's been there, she always gives me at least one, "Attaboy, Luther!" Brian, when was the first time that you saw The Ghost of Mr. Chicken, and what made you fall in love with it?
What a fantastic question. Of course, I've never seen the movie. I have it. I bought it recently on Apple.
What?
I bought it on formerly iTunes, now just Apple, I guess the store. I have it. I'm going to watch it, but I've never seen it on TV. Never even heard it talked about until you would start referencing it here on the show.
Oh, for God's sake. I thought you were supposed to be my conduit to pop culture, to relevance, to all the things that people need to know about pop culture. You're my guy, you're my touchstone, and you are admitting here in public that you have never seen The Ghost of Mr. Chicken. Son of a bitch.
And it's funny, too, because in general, I'm usually pretty good with pop culture trivia from 1966, but in this instance, no.
Have you ever owned a television?
I have several in my office right now.
Well, it's on television.
When? I've never seen it on TV. Where?
It was just on Svengoolie 2 weeks ago.
What?
Yes, 2 or 3 weeks ago, Svengoolie aired it. What in the world? You're telling me now you missed Svengoolie for a week, and it just happened to be the week that Ghost and Mr. Chicken was on?
As crazy as it sounds, I'm going to tell you I missed Svengoolie for a week, and that was the week he happened to air this movie I've been waiting to see. That's why I'm like amazed that you say he actually aired it a few weeks ago.
Yes, it was like three Saturday nights ago, I think. Anyway, for those of you also as uninitiated as Brian Last, the reason I fell in love with this movie is because I remember the night that my mother said, "Hey, you want to watch The Ghost of Mr. Chicken tonight?" And of course, with that name, I, of course, said yes without knowing what it was about. But my mom, she liked horror movies. She called them scary movies. And I even got to go to see some of the Christopher Lee Hammer Dracula films that lasted to the late 60s, early 70s in the theater. I'd missed The Ghost of Mr. Chicken in the theater because I was only, I think, 4 that year. But I knew Don Knotts from the Andy Griffith Show, right? And so this would have been the first time that The Ghost of Mr. Chicken was on the network, whatever night of the week movie. Remember? You might not even remember. They used to have the Sunday night movie, the Tuesday night movie.
I remember that, of course.
All right. Well, anyway, it was on the whatever night movie, and I fell in love with it from the premise to the haunted mansion. I love horror movies with old dark houses, old haunted houses, old scary houses. This thing was shot on the Universal Studio set right next to it wasn't the Munster house. It was the house next to the Munster house. All of the classic 60s character actors from TV shows. Dick Sargent, the second Darren Stevens on Bewitched. Phil Ober was old Nicholas Simmons, the heel in the piece. He was the alcoholic, abusive husband of Vivian Vance. Charles Lane, who just passed away here several years ago, the oldest actor in Hollywood. He lived to be 101. He was Homer Bedloe on Petticoat Junction. Rita Shaw, who was the banker's domineering wife. I think, wasn't she Aunt Hagatha on Bewitched? Ellen Corby from the Waltons. Burt Mustin the oldest looking human being that ever lived. He looked like he was 90 years old for 40 years. Hal Smith, that played Otis Campbell on the Andy Griffith Show, was the drunk, what was his name? Calver Weems. We mentioned Vic Mizzy did the theme song from we talked about Green Acres. How could I have left out? He did the Addams Family, especially the closing theme. They're showing that on MeTV 6 o'clock on weeknights now. The closing theme with the slide whistle and the fucking snare drum and the all the sound effects.
Addams Family or Munsters?
I liked the Munsters when I was a kid better because they had the especially the wrestling episode, and I loved Frankenstein, but I have a better affection for Addams Family as I've gotten older. If that answers your question.
Okay.
But anyway, the whole premise of the thing, the spooky house with the fucking the curse on it and the secret passages and the spooky music from the organ loft. Every night at midnight, old Mr. Simmons climbs those stairs to the organ loft, and he plays the organ, still stained with Mrs. Simmons' blood. And they used Bonami. It's a fucking classic. And Luther Higgs's Don Knotts' speech at the picnic, for heaven's sake, every time that I do a fucking show somewhere and the fucking PA mic screws up, I said, well, the sound guy must be a Republican. It's a classic all the way through. Greatest movie ever. You have nothing to add to this because you're so deprived you've never seen this movie.
I enjoyed the novel. I knew that would get you.
Well, you know something? I'll tell you what. If you're a fan of The Ghost and Mr. Chicken, but you're not plucking your nether regions, folks, you're not keeping as smooth and slick as you should, but you can with our friends at Manscaped. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the summer is here, the time where the humidity factor increases, the swampiness in your various crotchal areas and the places that don't get a lot of sunlight or daylight. And I know from seeing a cross-section of my fans that there are many of you out there, there are some places that do not see daylight on a regular basis. And I'll tell you what, if you want to take care of that while at the same time not slicing yourself to bits, not nicking and cutting and hacking and bleeding all over the place, it's the Manscaped Performance Package 4.0, which includes the brand new Lawnmower 4.0, the 4th generation trimmer with advanced skin-safe technology to reduce grooming accidents. No ingrown hairs, no snags. It's got a 7,000 RPM motor. It sounds dangerous, but it's not. An on-off travel lock, and it gives you the ability to turn that 4,000K LED spotlight on and off if you want to. So you can do this in the dark. I prefer the light on. But nevertheless, whatever floats your boat or whatever trims your trigger. If the power grid goes out in Texas again, by cracky, you can use the Lawnmower 4.0 not only to shave your crotch, but also to illuminate the way. It's waterproof. You can use it in the shower, whatever. It also includes the Weed Whacker that chops up the worst weeds up top in your nose and in your ear. You can stick that almost everywhere. That's got a 9,000 RPM motor, 360-degree rotary dual blade system. It's even got proprietary skin-safe technology. Brian, they ought to put this shit in the space shuttle. Whatever you do, go to Manscaped and get the Performance Package 4.0, which even includes 2 free gifts, Manscaped boxers and the Shed travel bag. Plus, the Shears 2.0 luxury 4-piece nail kit with slash-twipped tweezers or slashed-schlipped fleezers or whatever. I'll say it again clearly and distinctly. Slashed-tipped tweezers, rounded point scissors, fingernail clippers, and a medium grit nail file. Holy shit. That way, people are going to be seeing your fingernails and sometimes in the summer, your toenails. So
that is the roughest sentence you've ever read in your entire life. Clip
that nasty. Well, will you try that? Slash tip tweezers, rounded point scissors, fingernail clippers, and a medium grit nail file. And a partridge in a fucking pear tree. Folks, go to manscaped.com/JCE, 20% off and free shipping. And you do not have to pronounce this stuff. Just use it. It's fine products. Manscaped.com/JCE for 20% off and free shipping. Eliminate the summer swamp in your pants with Manscaped. All right, well, speaking about close shaves, Brian, or maybe thin ice might be a better terminology for this one. Jimmy Uso. Oh, my God. What do you think is his Uso cooked at this point, or is he figured in enough to this story that they're going to let him get by with this for now?
It is interesting. It's not new for a wrestler to get a DUI in the last several years, and
it's not even new for this wrestler to get a DUI in the last several years. This is not unheard of for Mr. Uso.
But it's now happened several times to him. This is the second time in 2 years. And of course, what makes this, look, drinking and driving is always wrong. You can kill someone. You can kill a family. You can kill kids. You shouldn't fucking do it. And he should know better. And one way or another, he needs to learn his lesson about this because he keeps doing it. But the fact that he's also doing it in the middle of the biggest run of his career says a lot about his mindset and just his priorities. You're making enough money, get a driver.
Or just stay home.
Or stay home and drink at home. Because if he's been busted this many times, not to throw stones or anything, but how many times do you think it's happened where he wasn't busted?
Well, that's what they're thinking, and that's what the problem with this. Anybody, I'm not going to knock this guy and kick him in the balls. I'm sure that's going to be happening enough from his employers and or his immediate family. And anybody can make one mistake. And, so everybody's entitled to one. But as I said on the Dark Side of the Ring about poor Sam Houston when he set the Texas state record, is if you've been caught doing something on multiple occasions, how many times did you get away with it? And the problem is with this, like you mentioned, anybody, you can kill somebody, and generally it's the drunk driver that wakes up in the hospital going, what happened? And everybody else is dead, right? That's the way it usually works out according to the news I've seen. But Jesus H. Christ, the timing is of like you said, the biggest push of his career. If you've made the mistake once and you probably got heat for it, and in some cases, they've taken, if they didn't have something for guys, the WWE specifically, if they didn't have something for guys, or they were looking for an excuse to just because they had buyer's remorse or the guy had heat or whatever, boom, that's it. You're done. When they're figured into something like this, it's a little stickier, but you can't push their buttons, especially in this day and age, because everybody knows, and it was quaint in the 60s. You see on the TV shows, that's one of those quaint 60s things where the cop will pull you over. Oh, you've been drinking here? Let me take you home, pal. No, that don't happen anymore because there's heat on that. And it's bad publicity, and they're not going to put up with it any more than they have to. And that's why I say, when you're a booker or a promoter, I've made these jokes before, but it's honestly true. You always wake up every day wondering which member of your roster is going to make the fucking news for something stupid. And or, screw up your plans in some kind of way or bring some bad publicity to the business. And that's why various promoters in various territories dealt with it in various ways. And everybody used to knock Bill Watts because he kept everybody's money back 2 weeks. Well, that's because if that way you were sure to give a 2-week notice. And if you did anything stupid on the way out, like leave unpaid bills around to get heat on the wrestling promotion or whatever, they would take care of it before they sent you your last check. But this is just, he should know, and that's the bad thing. And I don't see how this was a necessary thing that had to happen to him, especially when he's home. He's in Pensacola. It's not like he was out on the road somewhere. You can't get in your own hometown. You can't get from one place to another. When everybody in your family lives in that town, you can't get from one place to another, except by driving around 3 times the legal limit, was it? How did he know what home he was going to at 3 times the legal limit?
You know, another thing that I thought about, way back on the show, we were talking about Jacob Fatu, who was actually, I guess, a cousin of Jimmy Uso.
Yeah.
And we talked about the Briscoes in the same light as well. And I mentioned that I heard from someone, all I'll say is someone who would know, that WWE did not pursue the Briscoes or Jacob Fatu due to prior criminal records, criminal activity, whatever it may be. Well,
and let's not make them out to be the goddamn Ocean's 11 gang or the people who perpetrated the Brinks robbery. I don't know in Jacob Fatu's case with any degree of certainty what his issues may have been, but I know that the Briscoes' criminal record involves basic forms of assault, which makes them such a legitimate gimmick. But they're fucking not criminals. And Jay didn't do himself any favor about 10 years ago with some tweets that he made, but that was when he was in his 20s and just had kids rather than.
But my point is, all these things are old things.
But the point is, at some point, how long do you have to keep paying for something you said when you were 22 or whatever? Or I remember one time, I won't mention any names because it's not germane to the subject, but just the point is, one of the people involved in one of our WWF pay-per-views, not a wrestler, but still an important part of the production, took him 2 hours to get across the fucking border driving into Canada because he had a DUI like 12 years previously. And then there was another time they stopped Lawler going to Canada, and this was fucking 5 or 6 or 7 years after the incident in Louisville. And they said, "Have you ever been arrested?" And he looked at him. He said, "Ever?" Like, is there a time limit on that, or ever? But anyway, point is, we can all do one stupid thing, but then after you do that stupid thing, there should probably be much less likelihood of you doing that stupid thing again if you're not really stupid.
But my point was going to be with Jacob Fatu or the Briscoes, whatever offense it is, it's nothing in the last couple of years. It's something in the past. I'm not saying that makes it good or bad, but I'm saying that happened a while ago, and it's causing the WWE not to consider them. This is happening to Jimmy Uso multiple times while under contract to WWE.
Yeah.
So that's where it's hard for me to wrap my head around the double standard that there is here.
Well, there's a triple and a quadruple standard, because there's a standard for each individual person. As I believe it was either Joan Crawford said to Betty Davis or Betty Davis said to Joan Crawford one time when one of them was talking about the problems they were having with their current husband. Is the fucking you're getting worth the fucking you're getting? And each time you have to figure out, when somebody causes you a headache, is it worth it? But I mean, it's a shame with a lot of these guys, because in some cases, this gets on the news now. I mean, my God, do you remember 20 years ago, a pro wrestler could basically fucking engage in a hostage situation in a bell tower and may not make the news? And now if any pro wrestler, at least with the WWE, or just somebody who's been with the WWE in the past and still has some kind of mainstream name, spits on the sidewalk, they're all over the fucking news. So, can you imagine in the territory days, how many times do you think, because it was an old fucking cliche that the boys would end up fucking themselves one way or another. It's as old as the hills, the story of, I was going to push this guy. This guy was going to get the belt. This guy was going to get a big push. This guy was going to get a huge match, a big payoff, a great program. And then whatever. And it doesn't have to just be, getting a DUI. We've talked about Matt Bourne in Georgia getting in trouble and having to leave the territory, and that paved the way for the Road Warriors. And poor Buddy Landell, the time he had the $100,000 hangover and wouldn't come to Atlanta TV, got there just in time. I think he got there at 1:00 and was fired at 1:05. Other guys there's always been some type of issue where somebody was about to do something or could have done something good and they got in their own way. But remember, what was the story? Wahoo Mcdaniel was going to be, they brought him into the WWF. This was back in the, mid-late 60s. And he played for for New
Jets.
York, for the Jets. So they were going to make him the Indian star. And who did he get? Did he get in an argument with like Phil Zacco in Baltimore over a payoff of his first week?
I don't know if it was the first week, because I think he was there a little bit longer than that, but he got into a fight with Phil Zacco, and the end result was Wahoo never came back, and they took another Italian guy and just made him an Indian. And that's Chief Jay Strongbow. That's why Chief Jay Strongbow was in the WWF for all those years, because they said we're never bringing Wahoo back.
But we want an Indian, because Vince Sr. wanted an Indian, so they made an Italian guy an Indian. And there you go. I had two of them. You reminded me of one of them earlier in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Conan Chris Walker. And it wasn't as egregious as the other one I'm going to mention, because Vince had already seen him, and for some reason or whatever, but he was living in Georgia, and he looked like he looked like Tarzan come to life. And I thought, okay, I think it was at the Night of Legends that weekend. He's going to make a big debut, and I'm going to put him in a program with Dirty White Boy for the Smoky Mountain title.
Because Jake had just walked out.
I'm like, okay, I need a heel quick, this fucking guy. And I think he was booked 3 days that weekend. I think he missed the first one, made the second one, and missed the third one, and I never saw him again.
He made Knoxville. He missed Johnson City the next day.
That's what it was. Okay, because you were there.
Yeah.
He made Knoxville. He missed Johnson City. Then didn't he make TV?
No. You did a vignette with him beforehand on TV.
Say again now?
You did a vignette with him beforehand that aired on TV. It was a locker room promo that was shot on VHS. I think because it was a last-minute thing. And you did commentary over, I think, him attacking Dirty White Boy.
That's right. Oh, God. Well, anyway, I don't even remember, honestly, why he never came back. I don't know if he ever told me. I don't know if anybody ever saw him again. Did he ever wrestle again?
That was the last I remember ever hearing about Conan Chris Walker, maybe on some Georgia Indies or something, but...
Well, and it must have been something in the water, because my other guy was another Georgia guy, Outlaw Billy Black.
That's right.
Billy Black and Joel Deaton, and your 90s All Japan, back when All Japan was a major company, Billy Black and Joel Deaton both lived in Georgia, and they were a team, the Wild Bunch, right? Outlaw Joel Deaton and Bad Boy Billy Black is what it was. And I had seen those tapes, and they lived in Georgia, and they both could work. But I was intrigued with Billy Black because Joel Deaton had spent so many years doing jobs on Crockett TV that I was like, I don't really need a team. And Joel Deaton, he's fine for Japan because they didn't see Crockett's TV, but everybody around here has seen him get shit kicked out of him. I brought Billy Black in as a single. He only lived in South Georgia, so it wasn't that far. He had never been, to my knowledge, on television in the United States, but he's got a top recurring spot with Baba. And I said, how about come up and you can work the weekends on your time that you're not in Japan as a single, made him a heel, and brought him in and put him on. We did 4 TVs one night. And I put him on all 4 TVs. He won the TV title and defended it another 2 or 3 times, whatever. And he could cut a pretty good promo, even though he never did, because they didn't cut promos in Japan and he was never on anybody else's TV. But he sounded like this fucking, redneck swamp dweller from Georgia. That was his gimmick kind of thing. Kind of like Cameron Grimes, if Cameron Grimes was really dirty and, sleazy. So I thought, okay, this is great. This has started out wonderful. And then after the TV, the very next weekend, we were, I think, in Eastern Kentucky for 2 or 3 shows. And I remember that somebody had said, well, it may snow. And we told the boys leave early from Knoxville to go up to like Barberville, Kentucky. It's 90 miles or whatever, because it might snow. Leave a little early. Fuck, no Billy Black. What? No Billy Black all weekend. He made the first show again. He made the first show. That's when we told everybody it may snow tomorrow. So leave early. He didn't make it there. I never saw him the rest of the weekend. I called him on Monday at home. He answered, Billy, where were you? Well, I'm a Southern boy and I don't like that snow. And you said it was going to snow and I didn't want to get stuck up in those hills. I said, Billy, it snowed 2 inches. The town's fucking 20 miles from the interstate. I said, just leave early. Said, thanks. Appreciate you coming. Nice knowing you. And then when I told the story to the boys, because I had to tell that story, right? He was scared of 2 inches of snow. He didn't come. He didn't even finish the weekend. He was already up there. I think he got a draw that night, or elsewise he wouldn't have got paid. So I told the story to all the boys, and by the time it filtered out to the dirt sheet writers, they had said that Billy Black had left the territory because he was scared of Al Snow. So Al Snow got a reputation as a fucking shooter for scaring Billy Black out of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Al had just got there, but apparently they couldn't reconcile in their heads a grown man being scared of 2 inches of snow, so he was scared of Al Snow. Who else has fucked up a real good spot in history? Mongolian Stomper, Archie he would every once in a while, he would just get the idea that the promoter was screwing him or somebody had disrespected him and he'd just leave. Didn't he strand J.J. Dillon in Texas like that?
I believe so. And actually in 1982 in Mid-South, they built him up for a few weeks showing videos. He debuted at one TV taping, never came back. And obviously that wasn't in the plans. They had a long-term program they were going to do with him, never returned, just gone.
And the thing is, he wouldn't tell you. He wouldn't tell you he was me. It would be something that and I loved Archie, and he was great with me, and he lived in Knoxville at that point and made shots for us, and I loved his match. I was a huge fan when I was a kid. But from talking to JJ, like I said, and some other people, he would take offense at something, and instead of bringing it up even, he would just say, well, they're against me, and he would pack his shit and leave. And he had called JJ and said, hey, I got a good spot in Dallas. I need a manager. Will you come down and manage me? Okay. And JJ had been there like 2 weeks. And he shows up to town one day and Archie's gone. They never saw Archie again. He wasn't happy with it.
I don't know what's true and what isn't, because for the last 25 years, I've heard so many different versions of this. But there was always a story that the reason Honky Tonk Man got the Intercontinental title was because Butch Reed no-showed the taping. Although, I don't know how true that is, because there are photos of Honky celebrating in the locker room, and there's Butch Reed. But that was always a story that Butch Reed somehow messed up an Intercontinental title run in WWF.
Well, I don't know if it was the same. I don't know if he didn't show up for the match where he was supposed to win the title, or he had no-showed some shit right before they were going to put it on him and they changed their mind. It could go either way. But that's the thing, is you never knew, and especially in the territories when there was infinite places to go and work if you wanted to, and if you were any good, and that there were no contracts, so you were only committed by your word on either side. That well, like Terry's sick horse or whatever, if that's a case of a guy already being established and being a top guy and not wanting to do what somebody wanted them to do because they shouldn't do it for them. But there was also instances in a lot of cases of young guys that were going to get a break that, for whatever reason. And with Billy Black, did he ever, he and Joel went to Japan for another year or two, but then they were out of there. Did we ever hear anything of Billy Black ever again in the wrestling business?
I think he did some shots for ECW and some small shows like, again, in Georgia. But other than that, I don't think he did too much, at least past the mid to late 90s.
Yeah, that's why I said I could understand with Chris Walker because Vince had already seen him and that hadn't worked out. And maybe he just mentally wasn't. But with Billy Black, he's on a TV with the only company at that time in the United States that was working with the WWF. And I would have thought he might want to see what happened since about, a dozen of the guys that year that were working for me ended up with jobs at some period of time.
I remember the first time I saw him, too. It was in that video you did at the end of 92 to Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting with all the different people who had appeared on Smoky Mountain TV throughout the entire year. It was such a cool video. And that was the first time I had ever seen the Wild Bunch. And I'd seen guys do high-flying things, but you never see, like, Southern guys.
Yeah.
Just guys who look like regular Southern guys with mustaches doing these kind of things. And you had that one clip, I think it was Billy Black doing the what's it called? The Muda handspring backwards thing into the corner, and then Joel Deaton running with the clothes on. It looks so cool.
Yeah, it was. As a matter of fact, you reminded me of that. They came in 92 and did my tag team tournament when I needed multiple teams, and that was, some television stuff. And then that's when I brought Billy back at the first part of 95. That's when Al Snow had come in and Billy got scared of snow. It must have been March because Al came in February and it wouldn't have snowed after March.
If I could ask you a question to bring this back to Jimmy Uso, what do you do? If you're WWE right now, he's in the middle of this main program on SmackDown, what do you do? Last time it happened, by the way, he was off TV for 6 months.
The mistake that he may have made, he's got a twin brother. And I know that they've been milking the thing where the one brother is mad, blah, blah, blah. The other brother could come in and take the place at the right hand of the head of the table. Right? Or vice versa, or whatever. There's two of them. Figure it out. It's not like it's, if he keeps fucking up or this gets worse publicity or it's just sitting poorly with them because of his previous time where he got a DUI, I guess 10 or 12 years ago, then got another one a couple of years ago, and then was with his wife and tried to fight the fucking police department somewhere for pulling him over for going the wrong way or whatever. They're not going to cancel Roman Reigns' push. I'd change the story around a little bit where the other brother that didn't get in the DUIs, became the stooge for Roman Reigns and likes it and maybe puts the other brother out in the process.
Do you fire him?
Well, I mean, Jesus Christ. Do you fire him and let him go somewhere else and work after being in this hot deal?
Again,
being all over the television. Well, wait a minute.
But you're firing him for a reason. But again, the reason.
But hold on. Listen to the words coming out of my mouth. Do you fire him and let him go somewhere else after he's been in this hot deal because he has to? Because if he's getting DUIs at this rate, et cetera, he may not have been too good with his money, so he probably needs a place to work. Or do you keep him on contract at least until he completes some type of amenable, agreeable program, so you don't hand him to the opposition, but he does go through some type of rehab or program, and then you slowly work him back into the fucking system, seeing baby steps, seeing if you could trust him. That might be, it's not like you're rewarding bad behavior if you let him go, because I'm sure that they'd snatch him up on the other channel, as we'll get to that in a second. They're snatching up anybody they let go. So you're rewarding bad behavior by letting him go and take some, the Marks money and have a lighter schedule and, whatever. If you keep him in the fold and don't let him work for someone else, but penalize him in some respect as to you got to do some education program or whatever these things work out like, and put him on ice for a while. And then when he comes back, if he comes back, then maybe you like I said, you feed him in slow and see if you can trust him, or maybe you just put him on ice and pay him for 6 months and then let him go when he's cooled off. That's what all I was going to say.
See, I don't know. I mean, and again, it's different time, but I think back to Tully. If WWE fired him for this and AEW swooped in 90 days and hired him, I mean, his family's there. WWE's not going to play games in the press about this probably, but I don't know. It's not a good look right now, considering all these things, to hire him.
Well, what else are they doing over there that's not a good look they don't give a shit about? They could say, oh, he's finally going to be free to pursue a life of creative freedom over here, and that's what was driving him to drink over there, as they were making him do all this stupid stuff. That's the story they'd tell. They drove poor Uso to drink over there at the WWE.
So now he's hanging out with Adam Page over here at the bar.
Yeah, over here where our guys drink on camera instead of behind the scenes. But you know what? Here's the thing. Basically, if you get a spot that you like, you need to do everything you can, Brian, to keep it. Have you heard this?
Of course.
If you've got something you like, you need to go to any measure and any length that you can to keep that thing, and that includes your hair. And that's why our friends at Keeps.com can tell you how to keep that stuff. Everybody knows that guys over a period of time, some before others, tend to lose their hair. We've seen these staggering statistics on the folks that suffer from male baldness of various kinds. Well, now, with Keeps, you can not only keep the hair you've got, but you can even coax some of those little follicles that have fled the coop back into crowning glory. Keeps offers a simple, stress-free way to keep your hair. That way you won't be pulling your hair out over keeping it. They've got convenient virtual doctor consultations, medications delivered straight to your door every 3 months. You don't have to leave your home, and they come in a plain brown wrapper. It's low-cost. Treatments start at just $10 a month. They offer generic versions of all the finest hair loss medications. They've got more 5-star reviews than any of their competitors, but prevention is the key. You can't grow hair on a billiard ball, so start now. Treatments can take 4 to 6 months to see results, so act fast. Folks, if you are ready to take action and prevent hair loss, go to Keeps, KEEPS.com/JCE, and get your first month of treatment for free. Keeps.com/JCE. Get your first month's treatment for free. I'll tell you what, it won't grow hair in your crotch. You don't want that. That's what Manscaped is for. But hair on your head, that's what you want to keep.
What do you think Hogan would have fought harder for? To keep his spot or to keep his hair?
Well, I think he would have fought first to keep his hair, because he figured if he kept his hair, he'd kept his spot. But now the biggest spot is on top of his head. Anyway, I did something this week that I shouldn't have done. No, actually, it wasn't bad. I watched or reviewed or zipped through some of NXT, the Great American Bash, on July the 6th.
Now, obviously, I haven't watched NXT in a while. I think they did it last year. Is Great American Bash a 2-night event this year, or is it 1 night?
I think it was just 1 night. I'm willing to say they're going to quit here. Now, remember last year, one was on television and one was on the network.
Oh, that's right. That's
what it was.
That's right, yeah.
But anyway, and I surprised you with this, but I thought, you know what? It's 4th of July week. They're calling it the Great American Bash. Great American Bash, near and dear to my heart. I wanted to see how far that the bash had fallen. And I've got to admit, again, when you compare NXT with AEW, NXT, much better looking athletes. They're all in shape. They're all well trained. A more professional television program. I mean, there's none of the mistakes that you see on the other channel. There's nothing laughably amateurish, even when the creative goes to comedic and silly. There's nothing amateurish about this, and it's not just a fucking kids running the asylum where it's mayhem at the daycare center. It's just that the stuff that you're not interested in is just boring, and you have to sit through a 2-hour television program, but you'll get one, and in this case, 2 really good matches out of it. But you can't really laugh at anything because their attempts at comedy aren't funny, but they're also not, the set's not falling down. So you're not laughing at it in that respect like you are at AEW. So if you want to make fun of a television program, AEW is the one to watch. If you want to find some wrestling and you tape this program and just zip through the shit that nobody cares about, then you get the more quality wrestling matches. I think we've still established that. Having said that, I'm going to run through quickly and get to the main part of it, because there's 2 matches that we need to talk about. Nothing else was interesting. Opening. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I didn't watch, and I only heard this after the fact naturally, but I did see a lot of feedback on Twitter from people saying that there was one match. I'm going to wait to hear what you say. There was one match that I saw some people say may have been the best match of the year. I don't know if they're talking for NXT or for WWE or for the whole business. But I was surprised that one match several people really raved about.
Well, there is one match that it may be the best NXT match. We've still got that pesky Walter and Ilya to contend with.
Oh, did you see there's a rematch?
There's going to be a rematch, and we will be watching that.
Okay, good.
I need to know where and how and when, but we will watch that. But there was one match on this program that was outstanding and better than most things that you'll see anywhere, and one match that was very good. I will get to the stuff I didn't watch first. Tommaso Ciampa and Timothy Thatcher are now a tag team, and they opened the show against MSK. Remember MSK, the 2 small, bad hairdo, flippy guys with neither one of them cracks 190 pounds. And that was a 20-minute match that MSK won with a messed up small package on Thatcher. Thatcher and Ciampa looked like they could pick their teeth with either one of those 2 guys. So I didn't watch that.
Do they have fans in the building?
Oh, I thought you meant MSK. I certainly hope not. Yes, they have the limited number of people that they still have a Thunderdome, but they have a limited number of people around the plexiglass that are beating and banging and carrying on, spitting about, etc. They also did a face-to-face. William Regal and Samoa Joe called these 2 deadly rivals and opponents together to have a face-to-face and tell each other off. Guess who it was? Karrion Kross and Johnny Sameface. They actually had these 2 in the ring standing face-to-face with each other, and Johnny Sameface actually was standing there telling Karrion Kross, "You're scared of me. You're scared of me." The visual of this little goof up in Karrion Kross's face was ridiculous, and it buried Karrion Kross. He can potentially be a star. But as soon as I saw who they called out and I saw them get face-to-face, I said, okay, this is preposterous. Moving on. We come now to the very good match on the 2-match program for the $1 million title, LA Knight and Cameron Grimes. And yeah, I know that we have to bite the bullet and say that the $1 million title is actually a thing, but I guess they did something where Cameron Grimes made money in the stock market on GameStop or GameStop stock, whatever the case. LA Knight, of course, is the former Eli Drake, still 3 syllables. But this was a really good feature match on a wrestling card. It wasn't a main event. Cameron Grimes can work his ass off, but they presented him as a comedy guy, and the gimmick and the $1 million title and everything's not doing him any favors there either. LA Knight has just come in. I don't know what their plans are for him, but it appears they've pigeonholed him in this middle card category because this was competitive to say the least. I would, the point is, this is a good feature match. It's the 5th match on a 7-match card. That doesn't make any sense to the modern audience. On the Great American Bashes in the 80s, when I got the booking sheets and saw what the cards were, in my book, I not only wrote down what our match was, but I wrote down its position on the card. We're 6th of 8. We're 7 of 8. That means we're the semifinal. We're 5 of 8. We're featured on the card, or we're main event, because that not only determined in large part your payoff, but it also told you where you were in the booker's mind. So on big shows, I always wrote down what our placement on the card was, because however high you were, it affected your money and also told you whether you were a favored nation in the booker's head or not. This is a match that wasn't a main event and shouldn't be dependent on to draw money, but it was a great pro wrestling match with a lot of action, and it would have been a feature match. It would have been 5 of 7 or 5 of 8 in that area on the card. And in the old days on a Great American Bash, Grimes is all motion. He does some flying, but he does flying wrestling moves. It's odd. He physically doesn't look like he would be that agile and coordinated, but he does. But he does flying wrestling moves, not just gymnastics. Both these guys were really good. They're professional. They can work. They're timing. They're selling. I wish old L.A. Eli, if you're out there, don't do the up and over on ducking the clothesline. You know what an up and over is. When you go to clothesline somebody and they duck, but you still go over their head, an up and over, like you couldn't have hit Andre with that fucking swing. Don't do the up and over, Eli. Swing at his fucking head where it should be if he's standing up. If he doesn't duck, apologize afterwards. I told you that story. That's how Dusty first became enamored of me. When I was going to swing and he was supposed to duck and then hit me with the bionic elbow in the Superdome. And the locker rooms were separate. I couldn't talk to him. We never met Dusty the first time we worked with him, before or afterwards. So I sent word by the referee. I said, please tell him to duck. They had taken my racket away, but I had a cane as a gimmick for the Superdome show. I said, I'm going to swing at his head. Please tell him to duck. And he did, and then hit me with the elbow. And then afterwards, months afterwards, when we finally did meet and I was working for Crockett, he says, so you're the kid that was going to knock the dream out in the Superdome. But it's just a buzz killer. Anyway, they did an actual 1-2 with L.A. Knight throwing punches. And Grimes threw a few punches and then started in with forearms, but they didn't look as bad as most people's forearms do. They had some nice false finishes. L.A. Knight hit a big superplex at one time for a 2 3/4. They paced it well. When they did a big move, they both sold it. They were rubber-legged. I hate Cameron Grimes hit one of those reverse Hurricane Ranas, which is so stupid. But the finish, it was a great match. It kept the action and the movement up. There was a clear baby face and a heel. Even Cameron Grimes is a baby face now, even though, he's a baby face because he's entertaining. But the finish was really good. L.A. Knight had brought the $1 million belt in like he was going to clock, because he's won it from Cameron Grimes, I should have mentioned. He was going to clock Cameron Grimes with it, but the referee grabbed it and threw it out of the fucking ring. And they did another couple of things. But then when they go to the floor, L.A. Knight goes to the floor, Cameron Grimes follows him, and L.A. Knight hooks him and DDTs Cameron Grimes on the $1 million belt that was on the floor. The referee couldn't see it because it was right next to the ring, and then he shoved the belt underneath the ring. And fucking Cameron Grimes is going to get counted out, but he barely beats the count as he rolls and staggers in, and then L.A. Knight hits his finish 1, 2, 3. Really good match overall. Nice finish. Here's the bad part. The stipulation was that if Cameron Grimes lost, he has to be LA Knight's butler. So somebody they've hired from the comedy circuit is an old Seinfeld fan. But otherwise than that, it was a really good match. It like I said, it wasn't a main event like Cole and O'Reilly we're going to talk about in a minute that was outstanding and one of the best matches I've seen in the last year. But it was good, exciting, high spot wrestling match with guys that are on the card but not presented at the main event level.
That was the match that I heard the feedback from, or the feedback about that was the best match on the show and one of the best matches of the year.
This was the best match on the first half of this show, and it probably would have been the best match on the whole show if they hadn't had Cole and O'Reilly in the main event, and it was better than anything that you normally see on AEW television ever, but it wasn't the match of the year. It wasn't even the match of the show because, as I mentioned, Cole and O'Reilly were on the show. But I almost didn't see Cole and O'Reilly because I had to slog through. They did a girls tag team match with Mrs. Sameface featured that had to go 20 minutes. And then they did a segment with Ashanti the Adonis, who he's in a DJ booth. And there's 3 other people with him, 2 guys and a girl. It's AJ from WWE's Most Wanted Treasures, some girl and another guy. And they are apparently a rap group or whatever. And Ashanti the Adonis welcomed us to the Hit Row NXT North American Championship Cycle Celebration. I think that's what he said. And then they all broke into a fucking amateur rap. And this went forever. They rapped on the stage, they rapped down the ramp, and then they rapped into the ring, and then they climbed the ropes and rapped some more. It went like 7 or 8 minutes. It was just brutal. It'd be like me trying to sing Christmas carols at Rockefeller Center at Christmas on NBC. I'm not qualified. I can't tell good rap from bad rap because the good rap is rotten, but this had to be amateur rap. Somebody needs to give us a learned opinion on whatever this was.
Since he was on the phony Search for Wrestling Memorabilia show, did they keep his name? Is he still called AJ, or did they give him a new name?
No, I just recognized him standing there. I don't know what I don't know what any of these people's names actually. Ashanti the Adonis introduced himself. I'm Ashanti the Adonis. And then I just started zipping ahead, and if somebody mentioned either of these other people's names, I don't know. Anyway, but it was worth it to watch 2 people that are serious about the wrestling business. And I've liked Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly since we worked with them in Ring of Honor in 2009. But they have grown up, and this was so refreshing to see this. It was a wrestling match from the first lockup. And I didn't even take notes. I'm not going to tell you a blow by blow. Go watch it somewhere. Whenever they put it up on the cock, watch it. This was a main event wrestling match. They didn't have to do a ton of high spots and backflips and moonsaults and whatever because this was a main event and they're stars, so you cared about them. That it wasn't just constant meaningless motion. They got a chance to exhibit their art and their talent. Kyle O'Reilly's style, as we've said, is different than everybody else's in the business. He's got the MMA influence, the grappling stuff, and also because of his frame, he has to do things differently, but the striking and the kicks, he makes it work for him. That's what made him stand out in Ring of Honor. That's why we originally started pushing him to begin with, because he's painfully thin, but he looks like a real fighter, and he acts like one of the Diaz brothers. It might be a UFC or an MMA simile, a comparison. Adam Cole has everything except size. If he was 6'2" and 230 pounds, he would be in one of the top 5 positions in the wrestling business. Well, he'd be one of the top 5 guys in the WWE because the top 5 positions in the wrestling business are all in the WWE.
If he was 6'1", 220 pounds, he'd be the biggest star in the wrestling business.
Yes. I mean, he has everything else. He can talk. He can work. He has facials. He has a tone and a demeanor. Both these guys have physical charisma and that you like to watch them because they seem real. They seem like themselves. Kyle O'Reilly wrestles like nobody else. He wrestles like himself. He fights like himself. And he does things that he would do. And Adam Cole has that smooth all around confidence that guys like all the top guys had, the Ric Flair confidence when he's walking around in the ring. He knows he's not making any mistakes. But anyway, you would think at some point that a guy who relies on an MMA and a grappling style and a guy who relies on a professional wrestling style might have a clash of styles, but these guys have known each other so long and their styles work brilliant together. As a matter of fact, one of the words that I did jot down before I quit even taking notes was brilliant holds and reversals in a number of places. It was a fight. It was a struggle. It was a contest. They were working and selling, but everything made sense. There was logic to it. Their facials and their body language didn't give anything away. They seemed like they had serious intent to hurt each other. There was tension. You know, like I said, they lack size, but you can believe they're trained athletes because they don't work like Superman. And if they take a big bump, they sell it and they show the effects afterwards. This was a fucking, and it wasn't there's all kinds of different pro wrestling. There's beautiful, technical, modern day MMA influenced pro wrestling like this was. There's a wild ass bloody grudge match, which you don't see nearly as much of almost any of anymore because nobody knows how to do them right. There's a big high spot, exciting matches like Grimes and LA Knight had, that those are a little bit easier to see these days because people can still do those. But, so there's different kinds of pro wrestling, but you can see the good high spot matches probably more than anything else these days. You can see a really great contest as a modern style grappling match like this with no holes in it every once in a while. Cole O'Reilly, Walter Elia, guys that really know how to do it and don't try to get too fancy and cute and kill the whole buzz. And, a good bloody grudge pro wrestling match, wild brawl that looks legitimate and doesn't look like caca is almost unheard of these days. But this was one of the best TV matches I can think of. I mean, it was a different style pro wrestling than, for example, Cody and Dustin on that early AEW show that I still think may have been the best match in AEW history, all things combined. You don't see these often, but it's memorable. And so somebody actually thought they overlooked Cole and O'Reilly and said, but LA Knight and Cameron Grimes was the match of the year.
I didn't see any feedback about Cole and O'Reilly, only about Grimes and LA Knight. And by the way, Eli Drake is a better name than LA Knight.
Well, yeah, but they wouldn't let him keep it. I see. That's what I mean. I guess that's what the people that are left watching wrestling like the big bumps and the movement, and they don't necessarily understand that it doesn't matter unless it's main event guys that people care about as people, and then they need to follow the fucking story of the match. But there's almost nobody left to watch wrestling like that because there's almost no wrestling like that left. So maybe that's why they like the other stuff better. I don't know. If we ever get back to where there's 5 or 10 million people watching wrestling again, yeah, then you'll see why it's more important, because then the style of match that most of the people that are continuing to watch wrestling these days like is exposed to be the popcorn match. That's the fucking, well, It's like watching Ed Sullivan. You got the Rolling Stones at the start and Elvis at the end, but in the meantime, in the middle, you got Topo Gigio and the fucking tumbling raccoons of Pennsylvania. So you go to the bathroom and make a sandwich. Anyway, that was my thoughts on NXT's Great American Bash. Colin O'Reilly are golden. LA Knight and Cameron Grimes are very entertaining. And everything else was a shits.
So nothing's changed with NXT.
So nothing's changed. It's either really good or really bad. It's not just generally fucking stupid like the other show. But we'll talk about that in a minute. And a new stupid award for the stupidest person in AEW goes to a new contender. But what are you doing this week on 605?
Another action-packed week that I'm going to try to talk about quickly because I feel like crap. Get information about all the shows on Twitter at Superpodcast or on Facebook, facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. A few notes. The latest episode of Stick to Wrestling with John McAdam is out right now, covering Great American Bash 1991. The title of the show is We Wanted Flair, We Got Oz. Hear all about Bash 91, the disaster in Baltimore, at McAdamPod.com, or look for Stick to Wrestling with John McAdam wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Once again, want to make mention of Breaking Kayfabe with Baldwin and Barry. Get access to the show at BaldwinPod.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And of course, for patrons at Patreon.com/Baldwin and Barry. New episode up right now. The boys sit down with Bob Roop. Check this out today. Once again, Patreon.com/Baldwin and Barry. Want to mention that Charting the Territories has another short-form podcast, Stats 101, out right now, where rogue wrestling historian Al Getz talks about some of the methods that he uses in researching and tracking wrestling data that has been lost. Check that out at chartingthepodcast.com or wherever you find your favorite podcast. Look for Charting the Territories. And of course, the 605 Superpodcast, the Mothership! That's how I feel.
You've been
right
tanking
about
it all along if you had enough energy for that exclamation.
I used every bit of energy I had for that, but new episode in production right now. Some interesting things happening in Arcadian Vanguard and some 605 Super Podcast things happening too, but stay tuned at 605pod.com, available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. The Mothership.
Things are happening.
Things are happening.
Well, something happened on AEW this past week, and they were trying to blame us, but our hands are clean. Did you hear about this, Brian? The fucking guy that apparently didn't jump in the ring. He didn't make it in the ring. He got to the apron, and somebody corralled him, and then once somebody had grabbed him, Jericho wouldn't take a swing at him once somebody was holding on to him. Said he did it for us. Is this what I'm hearing on Twitter or whatever, this fat fuck or whatever his name is? What's his name? Fat fuck, fat idiot, fat bastard.
I'm not going to give this guy's name or give him any credit for anything.
He calls himself a fat something.
But what he tweeted out was that he did it, and to paraphrase, I have a few quotes here. Again, I don't want to read the whole thing, but basically, how did we like what he did? And he did it for all the real wrestling fans, and that wrestling's no longer safe for like people who dance around. But it's almost as if he doesn't listen to the show if he thought this was the solution.
Well, it's almost that if he doesn't read the news, because the last person that tried to go after the wrestlers is still in jail down in fucking Florida in some kind of mental institution, which is where this guy sounds like he needs to be after they were stalking Sonya Deville and whoever she was working a program with that she was hanging out with that night, baking cookies or whatever. Does this guy sound like a fucking stalker type? It's no longer safe. Apparently it's safe now because you've outed yourself with your failed attempt at getting in the ring, and I'm sure they're going to prosecute you, and if you keep saying shit like that, then they're going to pop you for being a mental defective, you fat fuck, and they're going to fucking put you in the booby hatch in a rubber room at the Puzzle Factory, which is probably where you belong. And at the same time, I see this as a heel program, Brian. Because anybody that listens to this program for any length of time ought to know what happens when somebody jumps in the ring. When somebody comes over the rail or jumps in the ring, generally it does not end well for the said jumper. not the jumpees. I've not seen any of the boys. Jimmy Hart one night was on the losing end in Louisville Gardens of a fight with a fan for about 5 seconds until Lawler got a hold of him. That's the only time I've ever seen anybody coming out of the boys coming out on a bad end of a fight when somebody jumps in the ring. You're going to get your fucking head creased. But it's a heel program. I blame both sides because there's almost nobody on the AEW roster that just the average mooch walking around the street would be scared of physically. We get this all the time. We get emails saying, when we talked about the Briscoe brothers, Mark and Jay here, I got a couple of emails saying, the thing is with the Briscoe brothers, if they were to fucking yell and cut promos on me, I would legitimately be scared of them physically. They would hurt me. Whereas if the Bucks or somebody like that did it, I would laugh at them. They might still beat me up, but I wouldn't be scared of them when they were doing it. That's the kind of feedback we're getting. So I think, and also here's another thing. If you jump in the ring on an AEW program, could you then also be prosecuted for, attacking underage minors or defenseless people? It used to be you could sue wrestlers because their bodies and hands were supposed to be lethal weapons. But in this case, if you put My Little Dog Pockets or Dwarf Dong Sucker up on a stand and tried to call them a lethal weapon, what? If the guy got stuck in my throat, he could kill me?
Well, you're being funny, obviously, but
I'm being
the
funny.
reality of the situation is it was Jericho and MJF, and this guy jumped the rail and was trying to make a move towards the ring, and I just think we should say flat out, if you listen to this show, you know what Jim thinks of AEW, you know what I think of AEW and wrestling as a whole. There are things we like, there are things we don't like, and by and large, we're not fans of AEW's booking and of some of the talents.
But we don't encourage the fans to go on a physical crusade and jump in the ring and get and
if you feel the same way, don't buy a ticket. Don't go.
Yes, we encourage you. Do not buy tickets. Do not go to this shit. Listen to us take the piss out of it so you don't have to put yourself through watching it, and don't buy a ticket, where I'm all in agreement with that. But if you jump in the ring, you deserve to get your ass kicked, and you're going to. Even from these little fucking cosplayers. And then think about this. I get Jericho. If Jericho had kicked his ass, I guess it wouldn't have been that embarrassing because people, for whatever reason, still think Jericho can go. And MJF's not that big of a guy. But can you imagine if they jumped in the ring on one of these little fuckers that might actually know something and they got hogtied and fucking taken down? What if My Little Dog Pockets stretched some fan? He'd have to leave the fucking country in shame. Oh my God. No, this whole thing is fucking ridiculous. No, we certainly hope that this guy goes to the fucking prison for as long as the statutes will allow. And it's ridiculous. Don't jump in the ring on anybody, whether they're professional wrestlers or whether they're just trying to be professional wrestlers, because it ain't going to end well for you. And it's fucking stupid. And then, for heaven's sake, and I'm not going to be taking the blame for this. I've never asked anybody to beat either one of these motherfuckers up. I've just asked for a number of people to fucking fire them and exile them from professional wrestling. So my hands are clean on this one. Fucking goof.
And I know Tony Khan is a big fan of you and, he's listened to all the things you've done. I sincerely hope in this case he copied something Bill Watts did and stood on this guy's head. Like, seriously, don't jump the rail. If you don't like something, don't watch or don't listen. Or if you want to make negative comments, do that. But at the end of the day, if you're jumping the rail, you got bigger problems. And quite frankly, I hope this guy, it sounds like this guy needs serious help. So maybe after prison he can get some help. But we don't want anyone to do any jumping of the rails. That's stupid.
Is this guy, does he fantasize that he's a wrestler? Is he one of these guys that is some outlaw fuck and thinks he's a big deal? Or is this, he was thinking this was his way to make a splash in wrestling? Or what was his outlook on that?
I'm not sure how much thought actually went into any of this.
Possibly some, was it 15-cent beer night?
I don't know about that, but
that may have helped.
Once again, people, use your brains. If you really don't like AEW,
well, but now think about
stay
this.
Home.
Think about it. You're asking this guy to use his brain. Fuck, he can't even read the instruction booklet. Anyway, and Bill Watts, by the way, I'd love to see Tony Khan stand on somebody's head. They wouldn't know it. You'd have to say, hey, pal, there's a guy standing on your head. Oh, shit. I didn't notice him there. Everybody was laughing because Watts had just come down because we were in Tulsa, right? So he'd just come down from the house. So he wasn't dressed up because he wasn't going to be appearing in front of the crowd. He's just watching the show, and he wasn't in his normal gimmick. He's wearing tennis shoes. If he'd have had his normal fucking cowboy boots on, he had both of his feet on the side of that guy's head, leaning on the wall to steady himself so that he could put full weight on the guy's head. While he's, so you want to hit some of my wrestlers, huh? Huh? That's what you want to do? And since I was the fucking aforesaid wrestler that he wanted to hit, and I was standing there bleeding out of both sides of my nose, I was enjoying that very much. But that's one of the things that can happen to you.
If you jump the rail, you deserve it.
If you jump the rail, you get your head stood on. Just hopefully Tony Khan will hire a stand-in headstander because he just don't have the body weight for it. Anyway, by the way, Brian, since the AEW program, and by the way, have we trashed this fucking idiot enough yet? Fuck you, pal. For heaven's sake. And he didn't even get a close-up. You saw his arm, and then they cut away to the crowd, and he was gone like a thief in the night. But since they made their long-awaited return to Wednesday nights, have we seen the ratings? They went back up and they've started going back down again. I'll predict that.
It was slightly down this week, I believe. I'll pull them up while we're talking, but I just saw them actually this morning, yeah.
But yeah, basically that's, they went back to where they were and then they've started heading downward a little bit. But I decided when I watched this last night, I didn't watch it right. That's another reason I'm in a good mood and you're miserable, because I watched this last night so I had time to get a good night's sleep and try to clear my thoughts.
I have the ratings if you want them.
Go ahead. What are they? What have they been?
So I will go back to how many weeks have they been back on Wednesdays?
I think this is just the second one, right?
Okay. Yes. June 30th, 883,000. July 7th, 871,000. So slightly down.
And there you go. I'm going to adopt a more detached tone for this. I'm going to be more of a reporter as long as I can. Because it's a new season, as they mentioned when they went on the air. The AEW Road Rager is part of the Welcome Back tour. Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out. And when I heard it was the Welcome Back tour, I'm like, how can we miss you when you've never gone away? And then I realized they were welcoming the fans back. I thought we wanted to welcome them back. But it's a new season and a new era. They were at the Knight Center in Miami, which is a hard building. And I congratulate them that they got whatever they got. I heard it was, 4,000-ish or whatever. The Knight Center is a fairly big building. They darkened it and shot it, so it looked good. But the Knight Center in Miami has never been a building that was going to draw big wrestling crowds for whatever reason. Even in the 80s, I wasn't there for the glory days of championship wrestling from Florida, but when Crockett would go, 3,000 or 4,000 people, maybe even I think a Clash of Champions one time we did there. And it's just a hard town. The Fantastics and Midnight Express had a house show match there one night that was one of the best matches that we ever had with them. And I can remember coming back cussing that there was no tape of that and it was lost forever. But Miami, even back in the 70s, the old Miami Beach Convention Center days, they were a steady 4,000 a week, 5,000 a week. It was a weekly town, but they never did big crowds in Miami. Even the stadium show they did, the Super Bowl match between Harley Race and Superstar Graham, NWA WWF titles, was still, 12,000 people? That may be the record ever in Miami. So anyway.
Well, another thing also, I think there are weather issues right now. I don't know how that affected the house in terms of
I'm not saying their house was bad. I'm saying that it probably actually was a really good house for that building in Miami. So I'm not knocking them yet. I'll get to that in a second. And they opened up with the South Beach strap match. And Couldn't even it have been Savio Vega did a Caribbean strap match. They're close. I don't see South Beach strap match as having the cachet of Texas death match, ghetto street fight, something that sounds violent. South Beach strap match. But because they're in Miami, is there no other South Miami town? Could it have been a fucking Castro death match? I don't fucking know. Anyway, they did do the touch all corners rules. You got to touch 4 corners in a row. And they could have explained it better. They kept saying how the referee can break his count at his discretion. When I've done them, I've always just said the count will be broken when the opponent strikes an offensive blow. In other words, and they kind of skirted around this because the way Cody ended up winning it, not like I'm spoiling anything here, was that he pickled QT a couple of times, but QT didn't hit him. They could have explained it better. If the count stops if your opponent strikes an offensive blow. But anyway, why did they have this match, Brian? To further piss in QT Marshall's mouth? I mean, from the start, did you notice Cody's entrance? QT was already in the ring. He didn't even get music. Cody was introduced, and then during QT's introduction, the camera stayed on Cody, greeting the fans. QT didn't even get a fucking shot. Why is this feud even? Why is this happening?
The feud has been done poorly. If the goal was to elevate QT or any of his students, and Go-Go, I just saw had surgery again on his eye, so he's out of the picture. We haven't seen Camarado or Solo, but again, QT.
No, we did see Camarado or Solo in the crowd as they were in the periphery of this, but they don't wrestle.
But QT got the job guy intro, and it makes you wonder what the whole point of this was. Was it just a stopgap thing to give Cody something to do before Aleister Black arrives, or someone else shows up that he has someone to work with who's, no disrespect, but at a higher level than QT Marshall, has more fan appeal than QT Marshall? This feud has been done poorly. If you really look at it from A to Z, the QT Cody feud, and going right to this strap match for no reason, and then opening the show with it, I don't know. It wasn't a terrible match, but just...
Well, I can see where they opened the show with it because Cody had to come back and get knocked out later on.
Yeah,
but it wasn't a terrible match. It just QT was there to get the shit kicked out of him and get moments of heat so that Cody could make another comeback. They used the longest strap I have ever seen. It was the right kind of strap. Remember the bull rope match that was a deflated garden hose? This was the perfect kind of strap and the longest one I've ever seen. Usually it's 8 to 12 feet, depending on the personal preference of the strap match master, Wahoo Mcdaniel or whoever's running the thing. This had to be 20 feet long, and there was a problem with it when you can't get far enough from the guy to get tension on the thing to jerk him into stuff and make it look good. But anyway, and they did some things that I've never seen anybody do a moonsault in a strap match, but QT did. And of course, it wouldn't have touched Cody where he was standing, but QT just jumped up on the top rope and went for a moonsault body block so Cody could whip him in the stomach on the way down with the strap. But the moonsault would not have landed anywhere near Cody had Cody not moved from where he was. Cody knew how to whip with the strap. QT did not. QT was bunching it up too short and wasn't getting a good swing and a good pop. And it also actually hurts a little bit more that way. Cody got the long one. But, I mean, Cody's beating the shit out of QT, and then Solo jumps up in front of the ref and clobbers Cody over the back of the head. And then it's no DQ. Yes, strap matches are no disqualification. But don't do that spot. That is lazy booking. And you got two stooges out there anyway. One guy could have distracted the referee. But when the heels just blatantly interfere in front of the referee with willy-nilly, even in a no DQ match, it just subliminally takes it down into people's mind. Well, what the fuck? They're mad at that instead of anything else. Then here comes Dustin out and nails Solo and fights him all the way up to the arena bleachers. And Camarado, that big caveman, solo, camarato, a go-go, just in case you've forgotten, he just runs after him and you never see any of them again. And then QT takes over from behind with a nut shot. And then QT, his first and really only effort to win this thing, they started doing the Tracy and Dirty White Boy finish where they both touch the buckle. But when QT goes for number 4, Cody puts the brakes on, and as he should have, and he grabbed a headlock, and they went to do a drop behind spot, but the strap, that's why you don't do these spots in a strap match, because the strap was around QT's neck, and when he boosted Cody up, and Cody was going to flip and land on his fucking feet, but Cody had the strap too, and it jerked QT down. It could have broken his fucking neck. Did you see that? Where they just went down in a heap.
I saw that.
And then to try to save it, QT gets behind Cody and tries to German him, but he Germaned Cody on his neck and his fucking shoulder. And all the momentum came to a halt for its, thank goodness, the way that momentum was going. But then Cody rolled out to the floor to do the spot they were going to do next, but QT had turned his back on him and went and touched a buckle. And then turned around and saw Cody on the floor and says, oh, shit. And he starts to get out over the ropes, and he realizes, oh, shit, wait, I got the strap. And he gets under the rope, and he went over there so that Cody can do the spot to pull him into the post. But, goddamn, just don't be so obvious. Don't just go, oh, shit, I should be over there. I'll just go and do that thing now. And then I hate to just pick these things apart, but I'm a reporter, and I'm also adopting a detached tone. But have you noticed, Brian, every time that somebody gets pulled or thrown into a post and they put their hands right in front of their head, it looks fucking phony as shit?
Well, yeah. I mean, I always figured it was a hard shot to take and you want to protect yourself somewhat, but there are guys that take it in such a way that it looks really bad.
Well, yeah, you do want to protect yourself, and also you don't want to do something if it's going to look like shit, and you don't want to bust your head open. So the idea would be take the post the right way. Everybody is looking when somebody gets their head thrown into something for the fucking hand in between their head and the thing they're being thrown into, right? Whether it be a post or a table or anything, which is why you don't do it that way. This ring has square posts. The square posts are easy to do this. The round posts are even easier. But watch, Lawler takes a masterful fucking post. Bobby Eaton takes a masterful post. Terry Funk used to take a pretty masterful post. The point is, instead of throwing the head and you trying to put your head into the post but not, and putting your hands up in the nick of time like people ain't going to see it, you take the post with your left arm tucked over your fucking stomach, and you take it with your shoulder. And you throw your right hand up over your head, and that's what hits the post or the table or the wall or whatever. And if you get enough motion going, when you fucking shoulder block that post or that wall, and you've got your face tucked, you're about a half an inch away from your face hitting the post, and you slap the post or the wall with the right hand over the top of your head and jerk your face at the same time, and you can't see through it. And the people's attention is drawn to the hand up above, which is clearly not in between the post and your face, and you get a little noise out of it, but also they see the meaningless sound and motion up there, and then they see your face fly back from the post, and they can't tell because it's close enough that you didn't hit it if you do it right. Or you can just throw both hands up in front of your fucking head and go head first into it on purpose. Anyway, QT got his ass kicked. When he got pulled into the post, he was off camera for 23 seconds and then showed up bloody. Can somebody please conduct a juice class? Because it shouldn't take that long. And to be honest, poor QT ended up with a pap smear that wiped off and dried up. I don't even think it ever dripped on his chest. They did a blackout, and the people popped, and it was a technical glitch, we thought. More on that later. QT got a little bit of heat, and then Cody came back and wrapped the strap around his neck and stood both feet on the top rope, choking QT with the strap. Why are all of these grown men standing with both feet on the top rope being offensive to their opponent? I can believe it on a second rope because you've got the top rope with your knees to brace or go around the buckle or whatever. But when people are standing on the top rope, supposedly doing damage to somebody, and that somebody that's getting damaged can't just push them off the fucking top, there's nothing to hold on to except the person that you're working with, which is why it's so obviously phony. And as soon as he did that, Cody jumped right up into QT's arms for a Hurricane Rana so the QT could catch him and powerbomb him off the top into the middle of the ring. And then a QT only got 2 buckles. Powerbomb off the top. At that point, JR said something over the top of Excalibur, interrupting him without meaning to, and then said, "Sorry, Mark." Is that Excalibur's name or just a description of his personality?
I believe that is, in fact, his name.
Yeah, well, now we know. Sorry, Mark. I was sorry the day you showed up on this TV show, Mark. Anyway, QT wrapped Cody up in the strap at one and did a diamond cutter off where Cody's draped on the top turnbuckle, and they landed in a heap and got 3 buckles. And then Cody put the brakes on, and QT tried to whip with the strap again, but was too short. Cody made a big comeback that had some fire to it and even hit the flying head scissors and some more good whipping. And then did you see the giant Cody cutter where he runs up to the top and leaps off backwards and gives the cutter to the guy in the ring?
I did see it, and I've never liked it. And again, to me, that move is preposterous.
It's way past preposterous. Did you see QT had to dive forward with his arms out to catch Cody? Because Cody, by the nature of doing that move that way, runs up the top rope and springs off backwards without looking.
Yeah, it's like he's doing a coffin drop, so he's not even really like...
Yes.
The other guy basically stands there and then just dives into it, which is what QT had to do. In your head, I can understand why it would look cool, but to me, it doesn't work.
No, because the guy standing there reached his arms out and dove forward to be given the move. It's a strap match. I'm surprised they didn't have more fumbles where, like, almost decapitating QT, where the strap gets tied up and gets in the way and fucks you up. But anyway, the giant Cody cutter, and then Cody gets 3 buckles and gives QT another elbow and a ball kick and 3 crossroads and gets the 4th buckle. And QT was laying flat in the ring as Cody exulted in the cheers of the crowd. And boy, this has been a vicious back and forth rivalry where QT gets his ass handed to him every single time after his boys get run off and are never seen again. I don't know what to say. Why waste gimmick matches and stipulation matches on guys that you're not going to impart any more credibility to than poor QT here? He can't do anything or whip anybody. None of these heels can do anything or whip anybody. They can't even get along in their own groups. Your thoughts?
I actually think the bigger issue is just blowing through stipulation matches, regardless of, this specific feud. Seems like every week we have a stipulation match. I'm not saying we do, but it seems like it. And we've seen such a variety of stipulation matches. And the biggest problem to me is sometimes they just pop up. Like a good stipulation match, there's a reason for it. And there's a build towards the stipulation as opposed to random.
It makes sense. Everybody, all the fans understand why it's happening because of what's going on. It's obvious on the face of it.
Forget about South Beach being attached to strap match. Why are Cody and QT having a strap match? Explain it to me.
I can't.
This feud has been disjointed. You could argue that there was something that could have been done because people know that Cody and QT are friends and partners in that gym. But I think this whole thing has been done wrong.
It could. Yes, there could have been a serious rivalry between two former friends over a business falling out, but not when one of the friends is portrayed as a complete goof that can't win anything, and then he's doing interviews on social media where he's talking about how he writes the show. So you think if he was writing it, he ought to put himself over once in a while.
And coming out of this feud, I mean, look, heels lose feuds and then things move on, but what do you want to see QT do now? What do you want to see him and his crew do? Who are they going to work with?
Heels lose feuds at the end.
At the end.
Can you imagine if John Wayne, if the fucking bad Cowboys didn't kill his wife or burn his ranch or shoot his horse? They just walked by and gave him the finger, and then he pissed on him? Anyway, next, Sean Spears, the chairman, was doing a promo in the back about hitting Sammy Guevara with a chair. And 20 seconds into the promo, a chair flies in from off camera and hits Sean Spears in the side of the head, and he goes down.
Off camera in front of him, though. Off camera right in front of him. He would have seen the chair coming.
Yes. The camera's like 5 feet away from fucking Sean Spears, and it's only one shot, and he's looking, and here comes the chair. You had to see the fucking guy. What? He couldn't see him. He hit through the entire camera setup. He's been there since catering at noon today in a mayonnaise jar or whatever. And then Sammy just walks in, says, "Gotcha, bitch," and sits down in the chair smiling. Whole thing lasted 30 seconds.
One note, AEW certainly loves their cursing. Too much of the word bitch, I think.
Well, too much of everything. When you're letting all these little bitches say bitch. And everybody says, they probably got an allotment. You're probably allowed like 3 bitches, a shit, and a damn or whatever, but they use them just the underneath talent, just willy-nilly. So it means nothing, as usual. Tony Schiavone was in the ring with Kenny Olivier and his manservant, Mr. Callis. Callis ought to be a butler. I think Olivier had extra pubic hair glued to his face this week. It may be the hair that Callis has lost off the top of his head, though.
Maybe it's the hair the Bucks shaved off.
Yeah, the Bucks were slick shaven. They got their Manscaped package. I hope they used our code, save them some money. Tony got 4 words in, and Callis jerks the microphone away and dismisses him. And he goes, "It's ridiculous to bury your announcers like that. I used to joust with David Crockett, Tony Schiavone, Jim Ross, all the announcers back and forth, right? But I didn't have the power to kick them off the program. They were the hosts of the program. I would come out and make snide remarks. But I did not have the power, nor none of the other talent did either, to just take their microphone and tell them to leave." So Callis verbally filleted Harpo for quite a long time, and he does a good heel promo, and they've made the point again, no one left for Harpo to beat. And did you notice that Harpo was wearing zebra-striped women's stretch pants in this interview?
Well, it was hard to not notice that, of course. As soon as he walked out, you notice what he's wearing. And I will say, and we'll talk about it later with the Bucks, I think Vince has always gone a little too overboard with wanting consistent looks for his wrestlers. I understand why.
You understand why now, don't you?
There's marketing reasons why, and lots of reasons why. But when Omega and the Bucks now, considering this week even more than Omega, when they're randomly just changing their looks from week to week, I don't know how smart that is, but at least Omega facially has looked the same for the last 2 weeks, but we get Omega in a suit, we get Omega dressed like a bum, we get Omega dressed in zebra pants. There's no consistency. What exactly is this character?
Do you think that he buys these things specifically to look like a douchebag, or do you think he's just bringing them from home?
To be honest, I think he probably buys them specifically thinking, I will look like a douchebag.
Well, I'll tell you what, never let it be said that Jim Cornette does not acknowledge Kenny Olivier when he's successful at something. So anyway, Callis did the promo, and Olivier's standing there, and I'm like, thank God he's not going to talk, and then the music hits. Oh, fuck, it's the Dork Order. And here they come again. There's 8 of them. Interchangeable, generic-looking job guys with Pizzeria Uno and the clown mask and the fat baked potato body under the suit. And he waddled into the ring with his growly pretend wrestler voice. And again, he's Adam Page's babyface manager / spokesperson to stir the fans up for Adam Page. Good God. And the only thing that I've ever enjoyed hearing Twinkle Toes McFingerbang say in his entire life is when he looked at Uno and called him a non-sports playing numbnuts. I'm wondering, is that's getting a little close to the bone? Is Uno in the wrong clique over there now? Is he on the outs possibly? But anyway, so Twinkle Toes asked Uno, what's the capital of Thailand? And then kicks him in the balls and says Bangkok. So we're going for fucking 6th grade nut humor here. And here's the thing. The heel just kicked the babyface's spokesperson in the balls. Is it the right reaction to laugh at that? And if so, or if not, why would you not laugh when some fat guy in a clown mask trying to speak for the babyface gets kicked in the balls in a Bangkok joke? It's silliness. And suddenly with the ball kick, here comes the Good Brothers and the Elite Stooges and the Dork Order, and they all have a sloppy fight, and everybody is dressed in street clothes, and everybody in almost all cases in these groups is totally nondescript, so you can't tell who's who or who's on whose side. And then Adam Page's music hits, and he comes to the ring. And Michael knock it the fuck off and get off my television, of course, is in there with Harpo. So they even have to do comedy here and make it look even worse. Where Page comes out and the people are up, he jumps up on the apron of the ring. Harpo shoves knock it across the ring like, here, you go into danger. And fucking Page nails knock it the fuck off, who turns around and runs full speed 15 feet back to bump into Olivier so they can both take a bump on their ass. So they're taking comedy bumps for the big babyface challenger's comeback. And then Page comes in and gives a proper comeback to Gallows and Anderson, all kinds of fire, and they fed perfectly, and he bumped both of them out because they're apparently at least professionals, unlike Olivier. Then he comes face to face with old Twinkle Toes. And as they're doing the face-to-face, Anderson pops up on the apron. Page turns around, nails Anderson again, and Twinkle Toes bails out. And there it was, flat as a fucking plate full of piss on Granny's porch. That was the end of the set. So and then they just walk off. But it's constant comedy with these clowns. And Page is buried, being spoken for by a group of dipshits. The fucking heel champion that's supposed to be getting this guy over as a worthy challenger is just doing comedy bumps with his stooges that he got a job for because he likes them for whatever reason. They have no wrestling talent. And there it is. The best thing that could ever happen to Adam Page is for the file cabinet that holds his AEW contract to go up in flames in an office fire so that he could be free to get out of there, and somebody hopefully would push him with his talent that would take him seriously, and he might be something. It's going to another 6 months in AEW, and Adam Page may be on the same level as goddamn Dwarf Dongsucker in this company. What do you think?
Well, I haven't liked any of the booking with Adam Page for a while, but I have to say, to give them credit, their fans seem to have just completely ignored all the stupidity because he got a good pop when he came out. And yeah. I hated the Bangkok thing. Beyond the fact that I hate it and it's stupid, you mean to tell me this grown man didn't know what Kenny Omega was going to do when he said, what's the capital of Thailand? I heard that joke on the playground when I was in elementary school. By the way, no one got me either. No one ever hit me in a
Well, see, down here, it's you like real estate? Let me give you a couple of acres. Boom.
Yeah, we do things different here in the Northeast, but
yeah.
I guess that's just the thing. I'm not into Kenny Omega's character. When I see him, and I appreciate him more than you do in the ring, but even with that said, I see him as, in the classic sense, an intercontinental champion as opposed to a world champion. And I don't see him as a credible world champion, especially with his behavior. It'd be one thing if he behaved differently or treated this seriously, but he doesn't. With that said, I think AEW has bungled everything with Adam Page since he lost to Omega in whatever it was, September, October, somewhere around there. If their fans are willing to forgive all that and forget it, maybe it was a hot crowd, maybe they just don't care, then, you know.
Well, no, their fans have not only have they not forgotten it, but their fans didn't see anything wrong with it to begin with. I'm talking about all the vast numbers of people out there who ain't watching this shit and ain't going to because of what they've done with him. You can't find guys that might be an attraction just in a bottom of a box of Cracker Jacks just like that. So to botch a guy with all the talent in the world, as they have done a number of times here in this company, is just insane to me.
But now here we are. It looks like once again they're teasing towards Omega and Adam Page. I mean, they clearly are. We don't know when it's going to happen. I guess it's still up in the air, right? Omega and Christian. That's been teased several times and never really gone anywhere. Yeah, I guess that's where we're at right now.
Well, I'll tell you where we went next. The all-important Jim Ross sit-down with the other Page and Darby Allin. Because now, apparently, our favorite Adderall poster boy has come to the conclusion that because Jim Ross's sit-down with Mick Foley made a star out of Mankind 25 years ago, we just need to have JR sit down with every member of the roster and it'll instantly turn them into stars. He has apparently mistaken Jim Ross for Merlin the Magician. Jim Ross is sitting in between the other Page and Darby Allin. And basically his question on the preamble, what has gone on between you two in the past to create this animosity? And then Darby spoke first, and I had to turn the volume up on the program because he was a bit of a mumbler. But he says that the other Page is jealous of him because it took him 12 years to get to the top, and Darby Allin got to the top in just one. And then he proceeded to say the reason for that is because Darby Allin, I was homeless. I was sleeping in my car, but you got married and had kids and never left your hometown. Well, who's the fucking idiot? Did you get that part? Yeah. I really want to be like Darby Allin. I want to be homeless. I want to sleep in my car. I want to do stupid shit to my body instead of this guy who got married, had kids, and never left his hometown and is on the same television program. So, Darby Allin then said, I have no walls of complacency. God damn it. Is this... I never knew that poetry readings could have a violent tint to them. I think what they ought to do, instead of having wrestling matches with these guys, they ought to put them in the middle of the ring and let them read nasty poetry to each other until their feelings are hurt. So then the other Page turns around and takes credit for getting Darby Allin where he is by sharing the ring with him and letting Darby learn his greatness. This made little to no sense. There was no real tension or heat here. There was no conviction in the delivery of this shit. There was no deep personal attacks. There was no sharp, pointed, fighting word personal comments. It was two fucking bland white guys pissing and moaning at each other over fucking nothing. And I was just dying for somebody to just stand up and slap the other motherfucker in the mouth. But they didn't. They just stood there and pissed and moaned, sat there and pissed and moaned at each other, and then it was over with. What'd you think?
I've really liked Ethan Page and his promos in AEW. But with that said, I thought this was a complete waste of a segment. I didn't think this came off well at all. Those two guys sitting there staring at each other, feet apart, with Jim Ross just casually sitting there, talking about shit no one cares about. I mean, there's got to be a better way to do this feud than, here's all the things we did years ago where no one ever saw it and you'll never see it and we have no footage and Let's just tell you all about it.
And then they didn't even tell us all about it.
Did he say he wrestled them already in a coffin match?
I don't know. I zoned out because nobody meant any of this shit anyway. But if there was supposed to be legitimate, serious personal issue, why don't they give them a personal issue that they're supposed to be serious between them that they can talk about? Since obviously there isn't really one, so let's work one up. But I don't know if it would be believable if either one of these motherfuckers stole a girl from the other one. And everybody knows they've never been a champion in any company that would pay them 15 cents, so they couldn't be mad about the hundreds of thousands of dollars that one cost the other. But certainly to God, somebody killed somebody's pet. Anything make you hate a motherfucker.
You know, Ethan Page could talk, and, Darby can't. You shouldn't be doing segments like this, where it completely exposes that he's dull. Unless you shoot him the right way and feature him the right way. Darby just sitting there painted up and not saying anything. And then when he does say something, you kind of don't want to hear him talk. It's just counterproductive.
When he does say something, he talks about the walls of complacency. Fucking hell. God damn it. Anyway, a match broke out, amazingly enough, on this program. If it hadn't been for Colin O'Reilly and Cameron Grimes and LA Knight, this would have been by far the best match of the night. FTR and Wardlow in a 6-man with Tully against Santana and Ortiz and Hager with Conan. And this made sense this time. Tully and Conan in opposite corners after what happened last week. At least it makes more sense than what happened last week. Except that Conan's just fine and didn't even have a neck brace on after the spike pile driver. You could tell FTR took some time and effort on this one, because this was obviously their layout, because it all made sense and everybody shone, and Wardlow and Hager were limited to the big spots where they could make an impact and not expose themselves. It worked all the way through. Dax and Santana with a nice hot open back and forth, nice wrestling. That Buzz Sawyer power slam that Cash is doing is phenomenal. He's strong as a bull.
He is getting more and more impressive. I mean, he's always been good, but the more I watch him, the more I'm starting to realize he's one of the most impressive guys in the business.
He's shining. Whenever you get a chance to see him, is this the first time they've been in the ring besides Blood and Guts since what, February? On TV?
They have not had many matches, which is...
But we got to see the same Cucamonga Kids match happens every week with the same finish and the same fucking falderall, but we can't see FTR but once every 4 months. Anyway, Wardlow came in, powerbombed somebody, and got out. Perfect. Ortiz and Dax did a nice series, and then they tagged Hager in, and he cleaned the house on everybody. And this was the best that Jake Hager has ever looked. And if anybody, when I talk about the heels not feeding properly, heels not feeding baby faces properly for a comeback, go back and watch this match. This is the first time that Hager tags in. He cleans house on everybody. He bumps them all out of the fucking ring. And that's because it wasn't Jake Hager. Suddenly, the light bulb came on, and suddenly Jake Hager's the world's best wrestler. It was because all the heels were in the right place and did the right fucking thing. And all Hager had to do was run from one to the other. That's feeding. That's been not only coming toward a guy feeding, but being in the right place when he's coming to you. Being in the right place, the tempo, the momentum, keeping it up. Boom. And they went to this was a good break spot because Hager looked like a fucking monster running wild, like he's supposed to. Get the fucking guy in, feed for him, get him out. Either guy on Wardlow or Hager. They came back from the break, and there was a strange tag there where it looked like they were both going to tag, and then they weren't, and then the babyface did tag, but Ortiz made a comeback. All the baby faces were involved. Hager, the power guy again, in and out. FTR hit a nice blind tag and double-teamed Ortiz to fucking death. But he immediately got a tag out and another Hager comeback, and then Hager calls for Wardlow. Yes, everybody wants to see the two big guys in the rings. They built that spot, and they get there, and there's a big 1-2, 1-2, and then Hager gets the ankle lock, and FTR's in, boom, to break it up. So you don't see too much, and the big guys didn't expose themselves. Tully drew the referee like a manager should, and FTR hits their finish on Hager, and Wardlow pins him. Overall, great fucking match. It kept moving. Everybody was on point. It made sense. There wasn't any foolishness or ridiculous cheerleading routines. Then, unfortunately, there's always got to be an afterbirth. I don't know. Conan comes in with, they call it the mad ball. It's a fucking ball in a sock, right? Like a slapjack. He hits Wardlow, and Wardlow no-sells it. Well, goddamn it, no. Any human being that gets hit with a legitimate fucking slapjack apparatus like that is going to fucking sell it. So after that good match, they did something phony. And then Tully chop blocks Conan, takes his leg out from under him, and then everybody leaves. I don't understand why the fuck. The babyface manager comes in and gets mad because these guys have been fucked, but fucking hits one of the heels who doesn't sell it at all, and then the heel manager takes over on the babyface manager, and then they all walk off. I didn't get that, but that was a finish that FTR had no power to call like they did the match. But the match, obviously, and I wasn't there, but that was FTR's match. I'm dying for somebody to prove me wrong. But it made sense, start to finish. Everybody was in the right place. It's just the afterbirth that I'm sure they were forced into by the Booker of the Year that you have to take a few points off for. What'd you think?
I agree with you about the end and the post-match stuff. I thought it was really good. I thought it's amazing we don't see more FTR because they're really good in there. I agree with you that...
How many weeks in a row did we have to suffer through Pockets, Chucklefuck, and Trent? Every week on the program. And Trent's, unfortunately now, since he's got his neck fused, he might not be... But Trent was a decent worker, but he was not used particularly well, and he was just okay at best. And the other two are egregiously unprofessional and should never be seen on television. But we had to view them every week. FTR, we get once every 3 months.
Yeah, unless there was an injury, I don't understand what happened, but they were great in there. I've had this thought before that Ortiz seemed to be a step behind the others. Maybe I'm wrong, but I keep having this thought when I watch him work that he's not as smooth as everyone else. One other thing I want to say, there was someone in this match that obviously everyone points to and says future star with AEW. And I had a thought watching this match, and I'd love to get your opinion. Who do you think has a better chance of being a breakout star in AEW? Wardlow or Santana?
Santana probably has a better chance at being a breakout star in AEW because he'll have more guys to work with and probably more chances to do that because he's already got some seniority. Wardlow will be a major star when he goes to the WWE because unless he stays there long enough where he learns too many bad habits and he can't get used to working with the big boys, he's too used to working with flying children. They can put him in NXT. They could get him a gimmick. Who is Wardlow? What is Wardlow? What's Wardlow's story? What's Wardlow fucking... What pisses Wardlow off? We don't know a goddamn thing about this guy. They would give him, hopefully, a gimmick, some type of something to hang your hat on, and he could be in the ring with guys that, even if they're not allowed all the times to do wrestling, better wrestling minds. And Wardlow's tailor-made for Vince. He's big, but he can move. He looks like a fucking star. He's got a body, but he can obviously do this. He's already farther ahead than Hager, and Hager's been wrestling 10 fucking years. But I mean, just to be standing around and being, ooh, he's the big guy on that team. That's what he's doing in AEW. So I think you're right. Santana has a better chance here, but Wardlow would be a bigger star in the major company.
I'm more and more impressed by Santana every time I see him. I think he's really good in the ring. I think he has a good look. He's been great on the mic, and I may even put him in front of
Santana
Sammy
either. I wasn't knocking Santana either. It's just that it's easier for a guy like that to fit in this group instead of Wardlow all on his own over there.
I may take Santana over Sammy long term. I don't know.
Well, Sammy as a babyface has lost most of his appeal to me because most of his appeal was the slappable face and the smartass that you wanted to see get the shit kicked out of him. Now he's a babyface. Now he's a smartass babyface. It's not very big. Anyway, did you like for 30 seconds seeing serious Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows? They ain't going to jack off at their Japanese job, are they? Even when they're just talking about it on American television. Anderson versus the balding plumber, Moxley, next week for the IWGP US title, right? What?
Apparently now he's bald. He shaved his head.
Well, I didn't mean to hurt his feelings that bad. Anyway, they did a serious interview about how he's going to fucking kick the shit out of Moxley next week on TV, night 1 of Fyter Fest. Every show is themed this month, so by the time they get to the end, the ratings will be even further down than they were before. They're blowing everything at one time. But they did a nice little serious interview. It shows they don't have to act like goofs because the Young Bucks were nowhere in the picture. Then we come to the segment. MJF is in the ring. Or no, MJF goes to the ring, and we go to break. And then we come back to Chris Jericho taking 5 minutes to the ring so that everybody can sing the entire song. And then we get the quick shot of the fan jumping. Do we know who got him first? Was it a security guy? Was it a AEW guy? Who got this guy first?
I'm not exactly sure because the way it was on TV wasn't clear. There are other clips out there, but I thought it was a security guy, but I did read several people say Justin Roberts was actually the one that took the guy down. So I don't know for sure.
Mr. Sunshine's about 6'4".
He's a big guy. Yeah.
He's a big guy. But Jericho did the old thing. As soon as the security guy had a hold of him, I'm going to go and try to hit him. But anyway, so we got finished with that. But this was a face-to-face sit-down between MJF and Chris Jericho. Have you ever read a book backwards? They've gone from committing felonious assault on each other at the very first time that they broke up, committed felonious assault on each other, then graduated to giving each other swirlies, and now they're down to just sitting in the ring by themselves and talking. There was nobody running. There was no moderator. There was no announcer. There was nobody running this thing. Why didn't they just fight? And I know somebody out there is going, well, Cornette, you say they fight all the time when they shouldn't fight. Well, if two guys hate each other and are in the ring all by themselves and there's not even an announcer there to fucking mediate this issue, why don't they just fight? They just sat at the end of a 10-foot long table. And now Jericho is begging for a match with MJF. Begging is a word they used. When he's done everything to MJF but sodomize him with a rusty fishing knife. Once you flush a motherfucker's head in the toilet, it's hard to stay mad at him. Jericho will accept any stipulation to get a match with MJF just because he pushed him onto that air mattress. And they got in another sex with your mother joke. MJF is always great verbally, but now there's no material here. It's just like now, let's let Jericho and MJF go out and do 10 minutes. Well, they went out and did 10 minutes. Finally, the bottom line of this whole thing was to get a match with Jericho. MJF somehow likened this. You know, he used to read Greek mythology when he was a kid, Brian. And he likened it to the labors of Hercules. So MJF gives Jericho 5 labors. He's got to have 4 different matches against 4 different opponents with 4 different stipulations. And after that, he can have a match with MJF. Fucking hell. Chris Jericho, at 4 different matches with 4 different opponents and 4 different stipulations in a row, Chris Jericho's 5th match is going to be with an oxygen tent. But he accepted the challenge, screamed a lot, signed the contract. MJF wanted a handshake. Jericho shook his hand and then pulled him into the Judas elbow, except in this case it was the Judas right shoulder. And MJF took a nice little bump off of it, but his elbow came nowhere near his head. Can we just move on? I know what last week you said they've made you tired of MJF, and I can see it.
You know, the only thing I'll say is, you pointed it out. We've said it for weeks now, months. The Pinnacle Inner Circle feud has been completely backwards. It's been counterproductive. It's been done wrong. You could even take every segment they've done and do it the same way and just do it in a different order. And it would make more sense even with all the problems there. But the fact that it's still going and it looks like it's going to be going for a while longer bothers me. And I had the thought watching this, because I want to see more FTR, and I want them to get their win back. Wouldn't it be cool if after this, not cool, for you, not cool, how about Pinnacle versus Elite?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
FTR Bucks, it gets FTR and the Bucks back in the ring. Get the title back on the FTR.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll happen. The sensitive Bucks, it's obviously clear now, brought FTR into the company because a lot of people on social media were saying they were the best tag team in the world, so they brought them in so they could beat them and then bury them and then get the fuck away from them so they couldn't be compared to them. And that's what's happened. Dr. Britt Baker and Reba, who's back on a crutch now, did a really good heel promo with Tony Schiavone. Took a big shot at the WWE on blood money. Maybe he'll run in Saudi Arabia next. Compared to the rest of the guys' promos on this program, this was a classic. Britt Baker can talk.
Yeah, no one ran in, so that made it even better.
And nobody ran in or threw a chair from the other side or whatever. There was no kidnapping in this one, so it was actually a pretty good interview. Andre Olio made his wrestling debut on this program with his erstwhile manager, Vicky Guerrero, and his assistant, who is a guy who stands there, apparently, and assists with something that we didn't see. And his debut was against Matt Sydal. And old Andre comes out in a black leather skull mask and a tearaway black and white suit that he had trouble with tearing away. Maybe he got it from a fucking strip club in Atlanta somewhere. He wrestled in the suit pants. And by the way, Matt Sydal is now ranked number 5 in this company. Have you seen Matt Sydal win a match on this television program?
No, and in fact, nothing against him because he's a talented guy, but when I saw that it was going to be Andrade's debut against him, I immediately kind of checked out because we've seen a lot of Matt Sydal lately. Again, I think he's lost every one of those matches. I can't remember a victory. But we don't know what happens on YouTube.
But I know exactly what was going to happen here, and it did. They had a competitive match. In the first 30 seconds, I wrote, who are they pushing here? It was not only competitive, Matt Sydal, I believe, out-wrestled him. They went to a break, and all of Andre's heat was in the 3-minute break. This was not a decisive, impactful debut. This was a competitive match between a new guy that hasn't wrestled in this company and a fucking guy that hadn't won a match that we've ever seen. When they came back from break, Sydal was making his comeback. He was kicking the shit out of Andre. Finally, Andre hit the clothesline and goes to the top rope, and Sydal was up already and met him there. So Andre knocks him back down, hangs him in the tree of woe, goes for the double stomp, and missed it. Sydal hits that double knee thing, the Meteora, got a 2 count. I'm ready. What the fuck? What the fuck? Question mark, question mark. How can this be? And Andre hip tosses finally Seidel upside down into the turnbuckle, hits him with a running knees, and hit a shitty-looking kind of DDT on him. 1, 2, 3. Blech! His Andre Oleo's impactful debut with 2 different managers was he barely beat Matt Seidel in a 10 or 12-minute match by the skin of his teeth. Who in what world thinks this is a way to debut talent? And then, after that blech debut, he takes his belt off, Andre does, hog ties Seidel up half-ass in a hold and cranks his arms up behind him, and then lets go of it. And what's the assistant for? Did I ask that? What is he assisting with?
I have no idea.
Then they did a package on Christian Cage and Matt Hardy talking in vague terms about their history for 23 years, but they couldn't show any of it because they don't own any of it. I like the way Christian speaks. He's convincing and he sounds like he means what he says. Matt is regressing, and I don't know if this may be the hot match that I would have put together in 2021, Christian Cage and Matt Hardy. It's just me, though. Just me.
And everyone else.
Next, the big surprise. I'm trying to just hit the high points here on this. Tony's in the ring with Arn Anderson. Tony even says, I've held the microphone for you on many occasions, Double A, and he pitches to Double A, and then Arn takes the microphone away from him. He's forgotten how to be interviewed. And Arn says the words, I'll get right to it. And the lights go out again. Prolonged. And this time, the lights go back up, and there is the artist formerly known as Aleister Black. His real name, as we've found out over the last few weeks, is Tommy End. And he hits Arn with that spin kick, and to Arn's credit, he took a nice little bump at his age.
Not only did he take a good bump, but the way he flipped the microphone up was perfect.
Yeah.
It looked great.
And then Cody appears instantly. It's like the lights have only been up for 10 seconds and Cody is in the ring already. And like, back up, telling him to get back. And of course, what happens? Aleister Tommy Black End or whatever the fuck, kicks Cody and knocks him colder than a banker's heart. But here's it was a great surprise, and the people didn't know he was coming, and they popped, and they got the loophole in his non-compete, so it was 30 days instead of 90. Great surprise. And excrement pops up on commentary, and he actually said the word, that's Tommy End. But that man's not Tommy End. Did you hear that?
Yeah, no, Excalibur was clearly the least valuable player of this entire segment.
God. He
made no sense because he goes, that's Tommy End. I know him from years ago. And that's not Tommy End. That's Malachi. He didn't even know what the fuck. It made no sense.
And he also, in the middle of that, he had to say, I wrestled that man in Dusseldorf, Germany 15 years ago. Okay, number one. I'm about to say it again, except for the nerds that follow this shit like the Bible, which is everybody watching this program. Nobody is just watching a wrestling show is going to watch this show. But nobody believes that Excalibur used to be a wrestler because nobody's ever heard of him. When you say I wrestled this guy 15 years ago in Dusseldorf, Germany, well, that sounds like bullshit, even though it's really true. Because Excalibur was never a real wrestler, so they had to go on these fucking goof outlaw tours. And I'm sure he's wrestled somebody in fucking the Isle of Man also that nobody ever saw. But your announcer's job is not to equate the new star that's being debuted on the program that would have wrestled some outlaw goof that we don't even believe is ever really a wrestler in Dusseldorf, Germany 15 years ago. Get his name right. And here's the thing. JR had the line. He used it before. He doesn't even work here. That's what he could have. Remember when the original Midnight and Paulie jumped us and left us laying? They don't even work here. They were straight off ESPN, AWA television. People were shocked. Well, here, nobody knew this guy's non-compete was going to come up this quick. It's a surprise he's there. The people pop. And excrement, Sockface, blows his name. It's Tommy End, but that man's not Tommy End, but it could be Malachi Black. And then poor JR has to say, well, Tommy End, whatever he's going to be called. Yeah, whatever fake name we're going to give this guy, once we decide what we're going to tell him to do. In the ring, it was a great debut. Outside the ring and on the announcing, it was a goddamn shit show. And not only that, but then once they completed that angle and Tommy End, Malachi Black, Aleister Black, whoever the fuck, he walks out, Cody and Arn are laying in the ring motionless, unconscious, and they got a wide shot. Not one person is rolling in to check on them. Not a referee, not a security guy, not a production assistant, not Doc Sampson. They're just laying there in an empty ring. That's how concerned people were with their health. Good fucking God. If he's going to have to change his name, you know what the announcers could have said, but JR could have said, well, he doesn't even work here. And Tony could have said, they could have just told excrement, shut the fuck up while the grown folks are talking. And Tony could have said, are we even allowed to speak his name legally? My God, what's he doing here? And then let the guy come out next week and tell you what his fucking name is. God damn it. But I'm supposed to be taking a more reportorial, detached tone to this, aren't I?
If you watched it without commentary, it may have been one of the best debuts. It may have been the best debut in AEW. You got a crowd reaction, legitimate surprise, because no one knew he had a 30-day non-compete clause. Everyone
including the WWE office didn't know.
Including WWE. It's nice to see when they fuck things up. But it was a legitimate surprise. It looked great. Arn took the kick. The mic went up. Cody did all right. The guy looked really cool. But the commentary dragged it. And it's only about Excalibur. JR and Shivani did nothing wrong here. But Excalibur made it so that if you were watching, you had no idea what he was saying.
Anyway, explain to me, I was trying to zip through the commercial breaks, and I said, did they show footage from their YouTube program, or this was earlier today, or whatever the fuck? Ricky Starks jumped in the ring with his security because he's not medically cleared, but Taz was yelling at him, what the hell are you doing? Starks was going rogue because he's mad at Cage, Brian Cage, not Christian Cage. None of them can get along. Brian Cage hits the ring, beats up security. This was only clips. What was going on here? Does anybody care?
I am not exactly sure. I don't think it was from YouTube. It seemed like they were saying it was earlier tonight. And then we've seen again, they've handled Team Taz awfully. And specifically this Cage, Ricky Starks issue that just all of a sudden popped up after Ricky Starks, we thought, broke his neck. I mean, he's coming back, it seems like. I couldn't figure out what exactly was happening here. What was the point of this whole thing? What was this?
To make Team Taz look more sloppy and stupid and uncoordinated.
Is the idea that Ricky Starks has lost his mind?
I don't know. I don't have
it.
Maybe
Cage the babyface?
I'm not sure. Because Taz was not happy with Starks, which would mean that Starks should be the babyface. But maybe Taz is just being honest and not happy with any of them because he's been put in the middle of this mess and made to look like an idiot. Maybe that's why he's not happy. The next match, the Bunny and the Baker against Pockets and Chris Flatlander. Snack break. 11 minutes on national television for these four. Embarrassing. Moving on. Jungle Boy got a trophy for the first person to get 50 wins in AEW. And he was as emotionless as you would think over such a momentous occasion. It's almost like his lips moved at one point. Standing there posing for pictures with it. And then the highlight of the program came up. We talked about the best match a minute ago, but the entertainment highlight of the program was the part of Jim Cornette will now be played by Dan Lambert. I love you, Dan, but you did my shit. You're doing my promo. Think of your own stuff. We saw Dan several weeks ago on the Most Wanted Treasures program. He's a huge belt collector. I worked with him and some of his guys from America Top Team when they were doing the thing with Impact Wrestling in 2017, and I went down to fire Bruce Pritchard. And he's a huge wrestling fan, obviously. And he's spent a fortune on that belt collection, obviously. And he can talk his ass off, and he knows how to cut a heel promo, obviously. But to take one of the well-known names in the MMA world and have them on your television program and have Amanda Nunes, who is one of the most well-known female MMA fighters, and also, oh God, who else was with him? I can't pronounce his name, but Jorge, the BMF fella. These are legitimate professional athletes that people know who the fuck they are. And instead of having them put your product over, which Dan would probably have done if they'd asked him to, they've got to parody me to have him do that to where at least they can give him a bump. He can take a bump for Lance Archer and take the bullet meant for Cornette. And where did his MMA fighters go when Lance Archer gets in the ring and is manhandling the boss? Fucking, you would think at least Amanda Nunes would have jumped in to try to do something.
No, they were laughing in the crowd.
Why just to parody me and to show how just goddamn sensitive and butthurt they are to all the valid criticism, because everything Dan said was true. But to show how butthurt and sensitive they are, they take a guy like that. And if they were going to do something like that, he can get heat. He could be a manager of a goddamn faction that could come in there, some kick-ass MMA fighters to stretch some of these cosplaying kids they've got on the AEW roster. That might draw some fucking money.
Yeah, if he didn't take a bump for 4 months.
I was about to say, but they blow off his heat in 3 minutes by letting him go and get more legitimate heat than anybody has got with that crowd, because he was saying the things that I say and the things that everybody else that doesn't like that shit thinks, and those fans hate that. If you were going to do something like that, bring him in for 3 months, do a program, get a pay-per-view out of it. But just to have him come out and cut the best promo that's been on their television in I don't know how long, and then lay him out just to get even with me, why was that done?
It was, well, we know why it was done. It was done because, and this is not a joke or anything, and for those of you who think that we just say it, it's true. You're in the head of a lot of people there. There's a lot of people there who, whether they admit it or not, whether they want to admit they talk to us or not, there's a lot of people there who listen to the show. You're in a lot of people's heads. Now, I will say this.
But why then get some schlub to come out like they do at the Outlaw shows? Cornette might show up, and here comes fucking Percy Cornette. Get some. Don't do it to a fucking guy that's a name that could, just to, oh my God, just for personal reasons, 3 minutes and out with this. I don't understand.
Good, but it was handled badly too, because he did a good promo. I'm not taking anything away from his performance. As soon as he starts talking on the mic, he turns around, opens the guardrail, just walks in the ring.
Yeah.
Really? That's how easy it is? To just walk in the ring and do a promo?
That's why the fucking fat asshole before thought he could do it, because they just do it all the time.
I thought that part was bad, and you brought up his heat. I haven't gone back and watched it a second time. I watched it that night. I don't remember him getting crazy heel heat. I saw people in the crowd, it looked like nodding along. I didn't hear like people going nuts and throwing garbage.
Well, no, nobody was throwing garbage. I wasn't watching individual faces, but I heard booing. But I think he got some people pissed off. Maybe it was the fucking talent roster that was booing him because they're more sensitive than the fans are. But the point is, all that just to fucking take a shot at me and the people that feel the same way that we all do. And to do that short-sighted thing, they ruin another opportunity at business. If you're going to fucking involve the guy in the program, then involve the guy in the program for a few weeks and get something out of it. Don't just, he comes out, tells the truth for 2.5 minutes, and Lance Archer gives him a fucking finish.
And the other problem, too, is he came out and he cut a really good promo. It's the first time we've ever seen him. You say he's a name. I think a lot of people have no idea who Dan Lambert is, even though he was on Impact and even though...
No, he's a name in the MMA world.
Right, but outside of that, to the casual wrestling fan, they have no idea who he was. Great
except
promo.
He was just on A&E 3 weeks ago.
And that does have more viewers.
He did a recurring thing on Impact when they had more viewers a few years ago.
But still, by and large, fans don't know who he is.
He's more known by the casual wrestling fan than most of these unknown outlaw guys that is on AEW now.
And he would be really good and effective there in a managerial role if there wasn't a overabundance of really bad managers right now. I mean, we could talk about Andrade. We didn't even bring it up earlier, but as soon as he walks out with Vicky Guerrero, I can't take him seriously.
Well, no, because it literally looks like he's coming out with his mother.
Well, I didn't say that.
I'm not being mean to Vicky, but how old is Andre? And how old is Vicky? And you tell me that it's biologically possible, I'll guarantee you.
It probably is, yes.
Well, then don't scoff. Anyway, should we get to the main event? If we do that, we'll be over with this whole thing quicker. Didn't they just have this last week?
Yes.
A street fight, Eddie Kingston and Penthouse against the Hardley Boys, the Cucamonga Kids.
But it wasn't a street fight last time.
It wasn't a street fight, but but how can you tell the difference? There are no rules to any of these matches. They do the same things and they all have the same finish. So how the fuck can you tell the difference? Kingston and Penthouse, and Alex was nowhere to be seen this time, his disappearing translator. The Cucamonga Kids are back to not gluing pubic hair on their faces, as we mentioned earlier in the program, but they're wearing blue jean shorts now because that's their street. See, they take the street fight very seriously. So whereas the deal when Dusty would book street fights is you wear blue jeans and cowboy boots and you got a heavy belt and a belt buckle on and bring anything you got in your pockets or whatever. They're wearing blue jean shorts to show how seriously they take the street fight, because this is all a joke to them. And it should be, because despite the fact that they're an embarrassment to their profession, they have no talent for what they're doing, and they look ridiculous. They're making a shit ton of money from a goof Mark who got suckered into paying them despite the fact that they're worthless. So they should be laughing. But I'm going to try to be more detached on my tone here. Jumpstart, trash can, super kicked. Michael knocked out.
Yeah, by the way, another one. Speaking of you being in their heads, did you hear, I think it was Excalibur. At one point he says, Michael, knock it off or get out of here, or whatever he said. He completely stole your line.
Yeah.
Calls the guy pie face, now he's using that?
Well, no, I think somebody said that he said that so-and-so pie-faced the Buck because he shoved him in the face. That is a move, a pie face. You pie face somebody in the face. But anyway, Brandon Cutlet, that nondescript piece of bland white meat, got in the ring in his clown outfit and started spraying the cold spray at all the baby faces. So now we've got a comedy street fight going on. I couldn't pay attention to it. I wrote kids in funny clothes doing play fighting and choreographed tricks with chairs. Just a few of the highlights. They set up a table in the ring. No, they set up a table on the floor and tried to set up a table in the ring, but Kingston's table in the ring broke, so he just pulled it apart in pieces. And then Penthouse and Pieface did a Canadian destroyer off the apron of the ring through a table. And by actual count, in 10 seconds, Penthouse was fine, up, crawling under the ring to pull more shit out. So at that point, I I can't watch this. It's in no way worth my time to watch these kids get to pretend to be wrestlers on national TV just because they were made vice presidents by a money mark and everybody has to indulge their fucking ego trips. I just random things. They got a close up of Balding Buck, and this is when I did start looking at the crowd. So I'm like, what? How can they like this shit when they see the same shit every week and it looks as bad as it does every week? So I'm looking at the crowd, and in the entire front row across from the camera, they get a close-up of Balding Buck, as I said, and there was one female in the entire. Everybody else looked like an interchangeable, fat, pot-bellied, bearded or mustached fucking frump, except there was one female in the entire front row across the ring, and she was the ugliest blonde I've ever seen, half her head shaved and a nose like a cucumber. So I'm looking at that was the classic picture for a Young Bucks match. They couldn't draw pussy with a goddamn license to print money. They've got a bunch of guys that are sitting there going, oh, well, they're doing flips and it's so cool. And all the women said, where did the men in wrestling used to go to that we used to come to the matches hoping to get with? And now we're sitting here watching these fucking children. I bet if a woman goes to an AEW wrestling match, if she's over the age of 21, she feels like one of those fucking teachers that you see popped on the news every now and then for having inappropriate relations with her middle schoolers. No wonder they don't have any rats. It's against the law. They'd be consorting with minors. What a bunch of sex symbols the AEW roster is. I mean, they're drawing them better than the Fabs. So this match was a bunch of guys doing a bunch of sloppy, goofy, contrived shit that resembled neither a fight, a wrestling match, or anything an adult would believe, be excited by, or want to watch on purpose. And then the finish, and I'm not kidding, Balding Buck and Penthouse do a stunt off the top rope onto a bed of thumbtacks laying in the ring, and then they put thumbtacks in Eddie Kingston's mouth and super kicked him, and that's how they beat him. Thumbtacks in the mouth followed by a super kick. They don't need to shoot Jackass 4. Just show clips of AEW matches, and it serves the purpose. Any thoughts on this that I missed? I'm sure there were many.
Not really. Worst Young Bucks match I've ever seen.
God, imagine the territory that takes in.
I've always liked them a little better than you in terms of in the ring. I mean, out of the ring, I think the same about them as you do, but in the ring, I've enjoyed some of their matches. This was by far the worst one I've ever seen. I keep saying go away Heat. I don't know how many other people are feeling it, but I don't think because they don't know how to be heels, they come across like they don't know how to be heels. And it's unbelievable, and it's just silly, and boy, am I not into this. This is not good.
That's what they play heels. As I've said, it's like flying an airplane. If you watch a pilot for about 30 minutes, then you can look like you're flying the plane by twiggling the toggles and pushing the buttons and switching the knobs. But in actuality, you have no idea what the fuck you're doing. They are imitating the visual moves that you can see wrestlers do, but they have no idea why or how or at what point to do these things. And the visual is ridiculous. So anyway, so AEW had a really good 6-man tag team match and a fairly good surrogate Jim Cornette interview. And NXT had one match of the year candidate, not the one apparently that some people thought, and another very good match. And otherwise, that was kind of 4 hours out of our lives.
Well, Jim, before we wrap things up, we have some breaking news into the show. WWE Digital has learned that Bayley sustained an injury while training for her WWE Money in the Bank match against Bianca Belair, and will be out approximately 9 months.
Jesus Christ!
A suitable replacement for the SmackDown Women's title match will be announced tonight on Fox. Tune into SmackDown. Bayley out 9 months. That's the story.
What the fuck should... what could she have done that hurt herself for 9 months? Tore an ACL?
ACL was my first thought. Training. They said training she got hurt, so my first thought was ACL.
Shh, good Lord.
Without knowing anything, I could be completely wrong, but my first instinct was ACL.
Yeah. Well, then that takes another high spot away from the women's side of the roster. Well, we hope Bayley gets better. She's one of the bright spots.
That's right.
But anyway, otherwise than that, your closing thoughts on this is your closing thought to be a run for the Benadryl as quickly as possible?
No, I think it'll be Sudafed and Sinex and Dayquil, a combination of those to knock me on my ass or pick me back up. Closing thoughts, didn't like the show. I went into it, I was in a bad mood with AEW from the past few weeks of TV. And there are certain guys that I've always liked at MJF that right now I'm just really down on. But, I'm hopeful when they work with other people and do other things, maybe things will be a bit different. I will say I enjoyed seeing a crowd there and a crowd reacting to things on AEW, even the things I didn't like. It's nice to actually have people there and people reacting to things live. Other than that,
well, they better enjoy it, because a few more shows like this and there's going to be less people there, whether there's COVID or not. I'm just telling you. These people have to have a fucking end to their patience somehow, even the AEW fans.
Unless there is a major name. I don't even know if Braun Strowman's that name. Maybe, I don't know. But with the debut of Aleister Black or Malachi Black, the other thing I would say is no more ex-WWE guys. Too many in the last several months. Nothing against them personally, but just the whole look of you just bringing in WWE guys right off their TV. Miro, Andrade, Malachi Smith. What's his name? Malachi Black or whatever his name is now. I think you got to stay away from any more WWE guys for a while.
And then probably somebody they really could fucking use would come along and they go, oh no, we've got too many now. Anyway, we've got too many things to talk about on next week's program. And as soon as we get there, we'll tell you what they are. In the meantime, Brian, I hope you feel better soon. I hope Bayley feels better soon. And I hope the guy that jumped in the ring at AEW feels even worse as soon as possible. And we will have updates on all these things and many more. Your show's next, the drive-thru, right? This coming week.
That's right. The drive-thru is next. It'll be out on Tuesday.
And I will be back, and we will be back with the experience next week. And until then, thank you. Fuck the guy that jumped in the ring. And bye-bye, everybody.